morning. At this time, we'll call to order the Board of County Commissioners meeting for Thursday, February the 24th. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Fast.
Aye.
Commissioner Myers.
Myers, aye.
Commissioner O'Hara.
Ms. O'Hara will be a little late.
Thank you. Commissioner Hanslick.
Hanslick here.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Here.
Commissioner Allebrand.
Allenbrand, aye.
And Chairman Eilert.
Eilert here. We do have a quorum present. Would you join with me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, another chilly, snowy Thursday morning. Not quite like last week, but anyway, thank you all for being present. Is the sheriff present yet? Sheriff Hayden? Okay. All right, we will continue with the public comment portion of our agenda. Do we have virtual commentators this morning? Oh, okay.
Yes, we do, sir.
All right.
We have
Well,
one.
again, comments will be limited to 2 minutes. And if there is a modem on the podium for speakers to observe their time, and if speakers run over, then the chair is required to ask them to conclude their remarks. So, the first speaker, please.
Virtually, we have Cassie Woolworth. Cassie Woolworth.
Good morning. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Fantastic. Hi, Cassie Woolworth, Olathe, y'all know. I sent you some data today. Apparently, we're starting day 3 of unmasked students. So I sent you our benchmarks for day 3. Now, we do know the numbers are down, but I am very interested in seeing what this no mask order does for the next, I'd say, few weeks of school. What I wanted to bring up today, besides the fact that we still don't know what's in Hamburger Helper or, a hot dog. So yeah, ingredients, FDA takes care of that. Who is dying of COVID? There's new CDC data about who's dying of COVID, and people who have received 3 doses of COVID-19 vaccine or a booster were 93.4% less likely to die of infection compared to the unvaccinated. That's a new UK study published. Actually, that was 4-4. But with only 64% of the population vaccinated, and that agrees with our Johnson County numbers, here's some updated data. Fully vaccinated individuals are 14 times less likely to die of COVID. Boosted Americans are 97 times less likely to die of COVID. The CDC just put out those brand new numbers. So I wanted to make sure you were very aware of that. You're free to do whatever you want, but you have to take responsibility for your actions. As part of a community, we take responsibility for our neighbors. If you are doing a me, I don't have to, I don't get to, I don't want to, then you don't get to play with the rest of the community. A hero is someone who understands the responsibility that comes with freedom. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Just a note for the record, Commissioner O'Hara is present at the meeting now.
So noted. Thank you.
In person, we have Daniel Austin. Daniel Austin. Then we will have Ben Hobart. Daniel Austin.
Good morning. My name's Daniel Austin. I reside in Merriam, Kansas.
I am glad the mask measures have been rescinded. However, we will be keeping our eyes on the actions that follow from here on out. The mask measures were never legal or right in the first place, and if you bring them back, we will resist them just like we had been, and we will do the same against these other so-called mandates that are not laws. If the lockdowns come back, I will go out and take walks, I will keep going to work, and I will not close my business or halt plans for any future ones. For the business owners that are going along with these measures, I hope you are listening because I am speaking to you now. If you try to require me to suffocate myself upon entry, you lose my business, and I will tell everyone I know that you do not value our freedom or our rights. If you require me to poison myself and prove that I have complied, like holding a card, you will never, ever have my business again, and I will urge everyone I know to avoid you like the plague. All of these COVID measures are violations of the First Amendment, which make them illegal. You are places of public accommodation, which means that your so-called policy violates the law and Title VII under the Civil Rights Act. This nonsense has continued because you have gone along with it and complied under everything Big Brother has told you to do, instead of standing firm and saying no to their tyranny. Safety is not an excuse. Neither is the saying, I was just following orders.
Thank you.
Now we have Ben Hobart. Ben Hobart. Then we will have Michael Round. Ben Hobart. Do we have Ben Hobart? Okay, we will move on to Michael Round. Michael Round. If we do not have Michael Round, we will move to Andrew Cross. Andrew Cross.
Would a staff person go out and check and see if Mr. Hobart and Mr. Round are present? Thank you. Mr. Cross, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, good morning. Thank you for ending your COVID mandate. It looks like the 1984 script has already played out, but some other scripts, one for the last 2 years would be Soylent Green, which had a bioengineering event that destroyed the environment. Another script is Do Electric Sheep Dream of Androids, where there was electronic surveillance of the populace with violent enforcement up unto death of thought control, and it ends when the enemy drops bombs and nobody knew they were at war. As far as questions that I hope that you guys can answer, when will the public be welcome in this chamber again? And at what level will the areola report not be needed on the agenda? But thank you again for ending this mandate.
Thank you.
Again, do we have Ben Hobart? Ben Hobart. Do we have Michael Round? Michael Round.
Have we verified whether either of those gentlemen are present or not?
We
Chair.
have, sir. They are not.
Chair, we
They are
have,
not.
they are not present.
Okay. Does that conclude our speakers?
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, thank you all very much. Is Sheriff Cal Hayden available? Well, I'm going to go
No, sir.
ahead. We have a special presentation for the sheriff this morning in the office that he occupies. That's been 5 years plus a couple of months. And so he will receive his 5-year pin for that. However, his service to the county goes far beyond that. He served 4 years as a county commissioner representing the 6th district, and I think about 27 years in the sheriff's department, rising to the rank of lieutenant. So altogether, 35 plus years of service to Johnson County. And on behalf of the board and the citizens of Johnson County, Sheriff Hayden, thank you very much for your service. Next, we have a special presentation from our Charter Commission. The Charter Commission was appointed 1 year ago, and the purpose of the Charter Commission is that every 10 years, They are to review the county charter and determine whether any changes need to be presented to the voters. The Charter Commission, members thereof, there are 25 members, and those members are stipulated by state statute. Different organizations have the appoint ability. The County Commission appoints 8 members. The State Senate and State House delegation from Johnson County appoint members, both political parties, Democrats, Republican, council of mayors, and chambers of commerce also have appointments, altogether 25. At the first meeting, the Charter Commission organized and appointed a 3-member executive committee and also elected a chairman for the duration of that process. And they are required to report back to the Board of County Commissioners within 1 year of their appointments and beginning consideration. So this morning, it is my honor to welcome Mr. Greg Musel, who served as chairman of the Charter Commission for the Commission's final report. Mr. Musel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission. Greg Musel, it was, I don't know if I could say it was a pleasure for any of the 25 members because everybody took it very seriously, worked very hard through a long year process. But I hope to run through very quickly today what we did. The chair has already described some of the things that are on the first slide, which is, I think it's important to note that there is an appointment process from a variety of authorities, which ensures that the 25-member commission is diverse geographically, politically, ideologically, from rural versus urban, and that worked in this instance as well. Linda was going to move my slides and she left, so
Sure.
I've got it. Not to suggest we didn't need Linda throughout this process. The activities that we undertook were to elect officers last April. We adopted rules to ensure that we had a strategy and a framework in which things could be considered. The charter requires us to have 1 public hearing. We agreed early on we would have 2 public hearings, and those were held on October 11th and October 27th with over 50 live speakers and many more people monitoring it either in person or or virtually. Our website received over 850 comments, some from the same person, but over 850 total comments were received. We had 23 total meetings. Each of those were scheduled from like 4 to 6 o'clock, although the public hearings were scheduled from 5:30 to 7:30 to give people a better opportunity to attend after work. We had meetings at the KU Edwards campus and at the Johnson County Administration Building in the basement. All of our meetings, the original ones were all online. Later, we had hybrid meetings where members of the commission could appear virtually or in person, and members of the public could do so as well. I think transparency is important, and our website was robust. It included all of the agendas, all of the minutes, and because all of the meetings were shown virtually, it also includes recordings, video recordings of every meeting and the public hearings that were held by the Charter Commission. I think that's very important going forward because it will provide a record for the 2031 Charter Commission that we lacked from the 2011 or 2000 Charter Commissions. You know something about our charge. We're to conduct a comprehensive review of county government operations to make recommendations. If the Charter Commission recommended an amendment by a majority vote of 13 members, it would be required to be placed on the ballot this November. The Charter Commission also has the opportunity to make non-binding recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners. We did not end up with any amendments to be proposed and placed on the ballot this November. There are 2 recommendations included in our report. I don't know if I need to run through these, but I thought I would at least show the 15 proposed amendments that were considered by the board, by the commission. We were very careful that these were discussed initially in what we called a first reading, and if they received 9 votes, then they moved on to a second reading to see if they would receive 13 votes. Not all of the 15 moved on to the second reading. Those that did, none of those received the required 13 votes to go on the ballot. We also considered 5 recommendations. The recommendations were listed there. None of those received the required 13 votes to move on to the commission. Those are, everything is included with the subject matter in our report. And in addition, due to the hard work of your staff, mainly Linda Sater, we also identified the meetings at which each proposed amendment was discussed, each recommendation was discussed, so that anybody interested can go back and review the videotape to see the discussion of the commission. I did want to offer some thanks today. Both the University of Kansas Edwards campus hosted us in the Best Building on multiple occasions. They did that at no charge to the county, and that was a great, convenient place to have it. We also were hosted 2 public hearings at the Embassy Suites. County staff deserves a great deal of credit for the support that they provided. Most importantly, Linda Sater, the Deputy County Clerk. We were also supported by Cynthia Dunham, Deputy Director of Legal, Maury Thompson, Deputy County Manager, and I can't say enough about Bill Nixon and his team as well to set this up to do video in different venues proved to be a challenge, whether it was the Embassy Suites or the basement of this building, which doesn't have all the technology that you have in the commission room, or at KU Edwards. I do want to single out Linda because she was there, and I think the latest I ever heard from Linda was 8:40 p.m. I'm not sure I ever heard from her before 5 p.m. She worked diligently and hard and past normal business hours to support the commission. And all of these people did that on top of their regular jobs. So I assume they are happier to have this report made than probably anybody else except maybe the Charter Commission members. And I want to thank the Board of County Commissioners. You each appeared at one of the public meetings to give your thoughts on the charter, and you supported us in our efforts to get some legal opinions on issues that many of which have come up before and were suggested as amendments or recommendations. And so we were able to get legal opinions on those. Those legal opinions, although they are technically an opinion between the Charter Commission and our lawyer and would be subject to the attorney-client privilege, we discussed all of those publicly, waiving the attorney-client privilege, and they are included in the report as attachments so that, again, the 2031 Charter Commission has a starting point to decide on some of the issues where we felt like we needed a legal advice. With that, Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to answer questions if there are any.
Okay. Probably should back up. When the charter was approved by the voters in 2000, one of the requirements of the charter is that there has to be a 10-year review. And so the charter was effective in 2021, so this is our second 10-year review that's just been completed. And I also want to say a special thank you to members of the commission, the 25 members who diligently worked to review activities of the county, and you know, without their commitment, we would have been unable to accomplish this. So, to all of those members, thank you very, very much. Any questions? All right, Mr. Thompson, you have a note.
I do, and thank you, Chairman Musil, for your report and comments and for your thanks. I want to take a moment to focus on the thanks to one person in particular here. And I will share with the Board of County Commissioners that at the final Charter Commission meeting, they did recognize our Deputy Clerk, Linda Sater, for her countless hours, dedication, and time committed to the process. It was extraordinary. And I would like to take this opportunity on behalf of, I assume I can speak for the Board of County Commissioners in this regard, the county manager and management staff, to thank Linda for her service to the commission, and have a small token here, if you'd step up.
Linda, I know that the process would not have worked as well as it did, or perhaps even at all, without your commitment and your strong support above and beyond the work requirements that you have on a daily basis. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you, and I thank the commission for allowing me to be part of it.
Okay.
And Chairman, I would note that even though, as Chairman Musil noted, the work is done, Linda is continuing to ensure that we have a very good, complete, full record for the 2031 Charter Commission. She and I and Cindy Dunham met this week to talk about making sure that we archive appropriately all of the electronic and paper documents related to the work. So hopefully, the next 10-year group will have a good record to work from. And finally, I'd like to call out one other group to give thanks to. As Chairman Musil noted, transparency was important to this commission. And to that regard, we couldn't have done that without the help of Jody Hansen and her communications team here at Johnson County. So thank you to them as well for making sure that this process was accessible and open to the public. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Again, thank you, Mr. Musil, for your service. And I know there were times when there was a lot of involvement from a lot of people. And so thank you very much for the great job that you, the executive committee, and the other members accomplished. Thank you. I see the sheriff is with us. Sheriff Hayden? Is that Cal? Yep. All right, I thought so. I stated earlier, but I'll restate again, the recognition today is for your 5-year-plus service as sheriff. Now, that only speaks to a very small portion of your service to the county. 4 years as a commissioner from District 6, and I think about 27 years plus with the Sheriff's Department, rising to the rank of lieutenant. So I don't have the pen with me this morning, but we'll make sure that you receive it. And but again, I wanted to say thank you for your years of service to the Johnson County community. And if you'd like to make a comment or two, that's fine.
Well, thank you. I feel like a kid again. I think the last 5-year pin I got was about 83. So thank you. But I appreciate the support of the commission, and there's a lot of things I'd like to say, but got a lot going on right now, as you can tell, as I'm late. But thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. All right, that concludes. We do not have any notes for the record this morning, so we'll move to the consent agenda.
Item number 1, consider approving the February 3rd, 2022 business session minutes. Item number 2, consider approval of agreements between the county and the City of Leawood, City of Merriam, City of Shawnee, City of Westwood, and the Kansas Department of Revenue Alcoholic Beverage Control entities, allowing Ryan Jacobson, MD, Emergency Medical Director, to assist the entities by reviewing and signing the entity's opioid antagonist protocol and training the proper personnel in administration of opioid antagonists. The initial term of the agreement will expire on the last day of 2022, but the agreement will renew for additional 1-year terms, absent 30 days' notice given by either party. Item number 3, consider authorizing a lease amendment with KC Road Partners, LP, for a 6-year lease extension for the Olathe Motor Vehicle location at 782 North Ridgeview Road, Olathe, Kansas. And item number 4, consider authorizing an increase in project authority for transit operations roof replacement in an amount not to exceed $222,300 for a revised total project authority of $850,000, and authorize the reallocation and expenditure of the general fund reserves in the amount of $850,000 for this use.
Thank you. Is there a commissioner who would like to have any item considered separately? If not, do I hear a motion? Ms. Allenbrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Hanslick, second.
Allenbrand made the motion. Hanslick seconded the motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Fast.
Aye.
Commissioner Myers.
Myers, aye.
Commissioner O'Hara.
Yes.
Commissioner Hanslick.
Hanslick, aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Allenbrand.
Allenbrand, aye.
And Chairman Eilert.
Eilert, aye. I have 7 votes in favor. Motion carried. Moving to the action agenda, item number 5.
Resolution number 008-22, application number SW21-173-CUP-MC. Consider a request from Rick and Amy Simpson, applicant and landowners, for a conditional use permit for construction of an oversized detached accessory structure and for the number of accessory structures on the property on 4.8 acres zoned RN1, Residential Neighborhood 1 District, located at 19902 Pepper Tree Lane.
A staff report, Ms. Wicklund.
Diane Wicklund, Planning Department. The subject property is located south of 199th Street and west of Homestead Lane, as you can see here on the vicinity map. The request is for a conditional use permit for construction of an oversized accessory structure, which will be 3,500 square feet in size, with a 12 by 50 lean-to, and also to allow for 4 accessory structures on the property, where a maximum of 3 is allowed by right. This slide shows an aerial view of the subject property. You can see the new building location and the existing tool shed and chicken coops, which will be the 4 accessory structures requested to be allowed on the property. Here's a picture of the tool shed and chicken coops. And then this is a elevation drawing of what the new accessory structure will look like. There were no members of the public that spoke at the zoning board meeting for this application. However, one neighbor did submit a letter of support for the project, and that is included in your packet. Staff recommends approval of the application, and the zoning board also recommended approval of the CUP with stipulations, including a 20-year term. With that, I can stand for questions, and the applicant, Rick Simpson, is on Zoom and available for questions. Thank you.
Questions of the staff? Ms. Hanslick.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Wicklund. I just wanted to follow up. There was a brief discussion last week that we're seeing more, I think, requests for oversized accessory structures. And can you talk a little bit more about, is that something that's being considered to change those regulations so that perhaps update them to better reflect what's actually happening in the...
Sure. Yeah, I believe it's kind of on the list of our, we're updating the zoning regulations. We're going to be doing that, I think, over the next maybe year or two. And these accessory structures are definitely on that list of requirements to change or amend or kind of look at how we can maybe do this a little bit more efficiently, so.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. O'Hara.
Yes, I just wanted to comment that I was glad to see that the term was 20 years instead of 10.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I would simply say this, this is in the unincorporated part of the county, and there are farm activities that occur, and so it's not unusual to have buildings support those activities, so I think we need to keep that in mind. Is the applicant present? Any comments you'd like to make?
No, I think I'm good at the time. I appreciate everybody's time.
Okay. Any questions of the applicant? All right. Was there anyone else who wanted to speak on this item?
No, sir.
All right. It's back before the commission. A motion is in order. This is the 6th District. Commissioner Allenbrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to adopt resolution number 008-22, which approves a conditional use permit to allow construction of an oversized detached accessory structure for the number accessory structures on the property and for reasons and subject to speculation set forth within the resolution.
I second that.
Alan Brand made the motion to approve the resolution and the conditional use permit as recommended. O'Hara seconded the motion. Any further questions or discussion?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Ms. Alan
I
Brand.
would like to comment on the, what you had spoke about. They do have a lot of farm equipment and they're big pieces of machinery. And so anybody wants to ever go out and visit one, I'll be more than happy to take you on a road trip. So.
Okay, all right, thank you. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Fast. Aye. Commissioner Myers.
Myers, aye.
Commissioner O'Hara.
Yes.
Commissioner Hanslick.
Hanslick, aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Allen Brand.
Alan Brand, aye.
And Chairman Eilert.
Eilert, aye. I have 7 votes in favor, motion carried. Next item.
Item number 6, resolution number 010-22, application number SW21-176-CUP-GA. Consider a request from Josh and Christy Zimmerman, landowners, for a conditional use permit for an oversized accessory building on property in Section 17, Township 15, Range 23, located at 21391 Deer Ridge Drive.
Ms. Leininger?
Yes, good morning, Michelle Leiniger, planning staff. This application requests for a conditional use permit for an oversized accessory building. Property is located just north of the county line between Cedar Niles and Clare Roads. Next slide, please. Here's a closer view of the subject property. And currently, there is a house under construction. The subject property is outlined in blue. The subject property is 3.7 acres and permitted by the regulations for up to 1,710 square feet of accessory building. The applicant is requesting a conditional use permit for 2,520 square feet of accessory building. Next slide, please. This is a site plan and elevations of the proposed building and building location. The colors match those of the house under construction, and the style is consistent with other accessory buildings in the area. At the January 26th Southwest Consolidated Zoning Board meeting, both staff and the zoning board recommended approval of the conditional use permit with conditions. One change the zoning board did make from the staff recommendation was to increase the time frame from the recommended 10 years to 20 years. This is consistent from recently approved CUPs for oversized accessory building just to the south of the subject property. One person did speak at the meeting, of which is the property owner just south of the subject property. They were in support of the project. We did also have 2 people that submitted comments that was included in the zoning board packet. One property owner was in favor of the project, one was not. I'm not sure if the applicants were able to make it in. I know they had something come up this morning, but I can answer any questions you may have.
This was recommended and approved, recommended by the staff as well as the zoning board, is that right?
That's correct.
approval.
The zoning board recommends the 20-year time frame.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? All right, is the applicant present?
Chair, we have Christy Zimmerman at the podium.
Okay,
Hi, Christy Zimmerman, 21097 West 124th Street, Olathe, Kansas. I think Michelle covered it very well, but I'm happy to answer questions.
okay. Questions of the applicant? All right, thank you for being here. If there's no other questions, it's back before the commission. Again, this is 6th District. Commissioner Allen Brand,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can I make the motion now?
please, yes.
I move to adopt resolution number 010-22, which approves a conditional use permit for a 2,520 square foot oversized accessory building on property located at 21391 Deer Ridge Drive for the reasons and subject to speculation set forth by the resolution.
Do I hear a second?
Myers, second.
Alan Brand made the motion. Meyer seconded the motion to approve the resolution and the application as recommended by the zoning board and staff. Any further questions or comments? If not, clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Fast.
Aye.
Commissioner Myers.
Myers, aye.
Commissioner O'Hara.
Yes.
Commissioner Hanslick.
Hanslick, aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Allenbrand.
Allenbrand, aye.
And Chairman Eilert.
Eilert, aye. I have 7 votes in favor, motion carried. Next item.
Item number 7, resolution number 007-22, considers City of Overland Park application numbers REZ 2021-00019, a request to rezone from city zoning designation Rural Residential District, Johnson County, to city zoning designation Single Family Residential District, PLT 2021-00073, a preliminary plat for 214 single-family residential lots on 141.8 acres, and PLT 2021-00087, a final plat for 60 single-family lots on 45.2 acres, located at the northwest corner of West 175th Street and Corvera Road, within 1 mile of Johnson County Executive Airport.
Ms. Kirks.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the County Commission. Michelle Cricks, Johnson County Planning. And this is a City of Overland Park application for rezoning, a preliminary plat and final plat located at the northwest corner of 175th Street and Corvera Road. This application is going before the Board of County Commissioners this morning because the subject property is located within 1 mile of Johnson County Executive Airport to determine land use compatibility as required by the Kansas statute. On November 2021, the City of Overland Park approved a rezoning of 141.8 acres from a city designation of Rural Residential District, Johnson County, to a city designation of Single Family Residential District. The subject property is here highlighted on the slide in front of you, and you can see where Johnson County Executive Airport is north, just a little north and west, north of 159th. The preliminary plat for the subject property was then approved by Overland Park City Council on December 1st, 2021 for 214 single-family residential lots and 15 common tracts of land. The proposed density for the development is 1.5 dwelling units per acre, which is considered a very low density for the incorporated areas of the county. The preliminary plat is here on the slide in front of you. A final plat was then submitted for 60 residential lots and 6 common tracts of land on 45.2 acres. The final plat is consistent with the preliminary plat, and the final plat was approved by the city's Planning Commission on January 10th, 2022. While a portion of the project area is located within 1 mile of Johnson County Executive Airport, it is not within the airport interest area, the noise interest area, or any of the primary flight corridors as highlighted on this slide. Planning staff did recommend approval of this item. The Airport Commission heard this item at their January 26th hearing and recommended approval with stipulations, and no one from the public commented on the project. And with that, I'm available for questions.
Okay. Again, it should be noted that this is before us today, even though it's in the City of Overland Park, because of the 1 mile proximity to the airport. And I think you noted that this is not in the flight pattern. Is that right?
That's correct. It is. This project is about 1.8 miles south from the runway 36 end of the airport runway, it is outside the primary flight corridor. The primary flight corridor is highlighted in purple on the slide in front of you.
Okay. All right, thank you. And it was reviewed and approved by the Airport Commission?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Other questions? Ms. O'Hara.
I just want to make a comment. Chapel Hill to the west at 175th and Flum, that is much higher density and basically the same proximity to the airport. Is that correct?
Yes, actually, part of Chapel Hill, I believe, is just on the other side of the primary flight corridor and does have
Yes,
approximately
on
the same
west
density.
side,
Yes.
right. So I'm happy to see that the density is 1.5 units per acre. As I have stated before, I have had concerns for the past 25 years over the development around the airport. And I think that we are going to have to be extremely cognizant of that going forward if we are going to protect the viability of both the executive and the New Century. So we just need to proceed with great caution, and I believe the Planning Department is working on that issue with the Airport Commission.
Okay. Any other questions? Is the applicant present?
We have Harold Phelps.
I think
Sorry.
Commissioner Allenbrand wants to make a
Excuse me, Commissioner Allenbrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate Commissioner O'Hara's comments and the board's working on those issues that we have of public safety and flight. So they're very cognitive of that. So I appreciate those comments.
Okay.
And I am ready with the motion whenever you're ready.
All right, thank you. Does the applicant wish to make any comments?
Morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. My name is Harold Phelps, Phelps Engineering, 1270 North Winchester, Olathe, Kansas. I am representing Matt Adam Development today, the developer of this project. So this is, for all practical purposes, an extension of Mills Farm and Mills Ranch that are occurring across the street. So this will be a very similar development to that. I would point out, and I'm glad Michelle left this exhibit up. So the red line that you see on the map is actually 1 mile within the airport property. As Michelle pointed out, the runway is about 1.8 miles. This is the last piece in this section between Quivira and Flum to develop and get approval. We will be back on multiple occasions with final plats, but this would be the last piece with a preliminary plan on the overall piece. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions of Mr. Phelps? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that has requested to be heard?
No, sir.
All right, item is back before the commission. A motion is in order. Ms. O'Hara.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to adopt resolution number 007-22, approving a City of Overland Park rezoning application for approximately 141.8 acres from city rural residential district, Johnson County, to city single-family residential district, plus a preliminary plat application for 214 single-family residential lots on 141.8 acres, and a final plat application for 60 single-family lots on 45.2 acres for the reasons and subject to the stipulations as set forth in the resolution.
Allenbrand, second.
A motion has been made to approve the resolution for the rezoning by the City of Overland Park as the applicant. The request has been reviewed by both the staff and the Airport Commission with their approval. For their discussion. All right, if not, clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Fast.
Aye.
Commissioner Myers.
Myers, aye.
Commissioner O'Hara.
Yes.
Commissioner Hanslick.
Hanslick, aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Allenbrand.
Allenbrand, aye.
And Chairman Eilert.
Eilert, aye. I have 7 votes in favor. Motion carried. Next item.
Item number 8, resolution number 009-22, application number SW21-179-FDP-GA. Consider request from Van Trust Real Estate Development, LLC, applicant, and Johnson County landowner for a final development plan for Phase 1 infrastructure improvements for the New Century Commerce Center East Area Plan on 242 acres zoned PEC-LP Logistics Park District located at the southwest corner of 159th Street and Clare Road.
Mr. Penley.
Thank you, Chairman, Commissioners, Sean Penley, County Planning Staff. The following application is a final development plan for Phase 1 infrastructure improvements for the New Century Commerce Center East Area Plan. The subject property is indicated on the vicinity map, is located at the southwest corner of 159th Street and Clare Road. If you recall, the project was before the board with a rezoning and a preliminary development plan that's indicated here on the map. This was approved. The rezoning and the preliminary development plan for this entire east area was approved by the board on November 18th of 2021. This is the first application for a final development plan in this Commerce Center, and this will include infrastructure only at this point. So although the building locations are identified here according to the preliminary plan, the red outline is the area for infrastructure. So this will be a first phase for infrastructure only. Separate final development plans for the buildings will come soon after. The overall preliminary development plan area for this east area was a total of 536 acres, and the Phase 1 infrastructure area is approximately 242 acres. So that's the area outlined in red here, right at the corner of 159th and Clare Road. The infrastructure plans will consist of mass grading, water main lines, sanitary sewer lines, and street improvements. So there's several plans included in this packet that identify those details for infrastructure. This will include a new collector road that will be constructed from 159th Street, and it will be serving future industrial lots, and a collector road with a connection to Clare Road. These areas are outlined here in the dashed outline on the plans. There are additional plans and details provided for road sections, grading, construction plans. All these plans are included here in the packet. And this identifies the mass grading for this area. This will essentially be what is starting for this first phase will be the north half of that east area. So essentially everything north of 165th Street going to 159th Street on the west side of Clare Road. And I believe that's the details that are included in the plans. The applicant has also submitted final development plans for the first two buildings in this Phase 1, and that will be located, buildings A and B will be located right at the corner of 159th and Clare Road. Those applications are currently under review by county staff, and they're scheduled for review by the Southwest Consolidated Zoning Board on March 23rd, and it'll come before the board. It's anticipated in April. Staff does recommend approval of the final development plan for Phase 1 infrastructure. The Southwest Consolidated Zoning Board held a public hearing for this application on January 26th. Nobody spoke at that hearing, and the Zoning Board recommended approval by a vote of 7-0 with the stipulations that were recommended by staff. We do have representatives from Van Trust and Olson here today, and I believe Aaron Otto is also available on Zoom. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of staff? Ms. O'Hara.
Could you refresh my memory? What is this package going to cost the county at this point?
That detailed question would probably be better for the applicant to answer. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Van Trust rep, can you make any comments?
I was looking out to the gallery here. I want to make sure I get my numbers right. Did you hear the question, Rich? I just want to make sure we confer.
Here comes a number, is that what you're saying?
Yes. Well, I just want to make sure the question was what is this going to cost the county?
Yes. Is this, we put this out, did we bond these expenditures? I mean, I remember that it came before us, but I do not remember the numbers.
Yeah, Phase 1 numbers.
Approach
yes,
the
sir.
microphone?
Yeah, I want to make sure.
Good afternoon. Good morning. Rich Muller, Van Trust Real Estate. Relative to the question, the numbers have, so what was approved prior, what was approved prior were the overall budgets for all four phases for the project, right? And so what we're doing now is we're receiving bids as we speak for what the scopes are in this first phase, which was what was approved prior. And so we don't know relative to that budget where those numbers are coming in, but there's a process in place once we have those numbers. If we're under budget,
We all know what those previously approved numbers were, but if we're over by a certain amount, we'll be back to talk about that. But right now, we don't know where those numbers have actually landed, but we do know the budget that was approved, and I do not recall it off the top of my head.
That's why.
And neither do I. So we're in the same boat.
All right.
All right. So this will come before us again if it's over budget?
Yes, if we're over budget by, I think the number that was discussed, or the number that was documented was 10% over budget. We have to, there's a mechanism by which we solve for how that overage is addressed.
Okay. And I will go back and refresh my memory on those numbers.
Certainly.
Okay, thank you. Other questions?
That's what I was asking, sorry.
Ms. Fast.
Yes, thank you. When I look at it, it looks like this plan is not much different than the preliminary development plan. Is that correct? They're just coming forth with phase one. This is similar to the preliminary. And can you brief, when we talked about the preliminary, we talked about a water study. We also talked about impacts for the Johnson County waste sewer system. And we didn't have that information then. Do you have information on impacts to waste and water?
Certainly, Sean Penley, County Planning Staff. Yes, the final development plan for infrastructure is identical to the approved preliminary development plan, so same layout of infrastructure, layout of streets. Buildings details will be provided and forthcoming with separate final development plans, so you will soon be seeing the first final development plan for the first two buildings, and those will include additional details. The applicant has provided updated traffic impact studies, stormwater studies, and a water study was recently approved and reviewed with Water District 7. So those details have all been provided, and at this point, all those requirements have been satisfied. And so, but additional details will be forthcoming with the individual final development plans for buildings.
Okay, other questions? All right, if there's no further comments, the item is back before the commission. A motion would be in order. Ms. Allenbrand?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to adopt resolution number 009.22, which approves a request for the final development plan for Phase 1 infrastructure improvements for the New Century Commerce Center East Area Plan for the reasons and subject to speculation set forth by the resolution.
Myers, second.
Allenbrand made the motion. Meyer seconded the motion to approve the resolution in regards to the development of the Commerce Center at New Century Airport, as recommended and presented. Any further questions or comments? Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Fast.
Aye.
Commissioner Myers.
Myers, aye.
Commissioner O'Hara.
Yes.
Commissioner Hanslick.
Hanslick, aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Allenbrand.
Allenbrand, aye.
And Chairman Eilert.
Eilert, aye. I have 7 votes in favor. Motion carried. Are there any other items on the action agenda?
No, sir.
All right, moving to reports and communications, County Manager, Ms. Post Oak Ferguson.
Good morning, Commissioners. We have a number of items this morning. I want to highlight the first two are notice of public hearings. The first one, the City of DeSoto has notified the board that they will be conducting a public hearing on Thursday, March 3rd. The purpose of the public hearing is to consider the issuance of $100 million in industrial revenue bonds and an 85% 10-year property tax abatement. The project is a 1 million square foot facility located at the northwest corner of 103rd and Edgerton Road. This is located at the former Sunflower ammunition plant located within the annexed areas. The project applicant is Flint Commerce, LLC. The notice of public hearing and cost benefit report is in your packet. In the second notice of public hearing, the City of Overland Park has notified the board they will be conducting a public hearing on Monday, March 21st. The purpose of the public hearing is to consider amending a TIF redevelopment district by adopting an amended district plan. An amended district plan. The district is located at the northwest corner of 435 and Metcalf Avenue, and information is in your packet. So I'll pause and see if there's any questions on the two notice of public hearings.
Mr. Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Post Oak Ferguson, thank you. Question. And we've seen this from Columbia Capital, this kind of analysis before, and I appreciate the City of DeSoto and Columbia Capital and others who provide this kind of analysis. But one thing that always strikes me, and I've asked this question before, but in the Columbia analysis on their cover page, or their first page, excuse me, they note that the estimates could be materially different from the actual model based on the kinds of end users that actually occupy the facility. And I was wondering, do we ever receive audits and confirmations over time from other efforts like this to make sure that the cost-benefit analysis, within reason, of course, holds true?
My understanding is we don't typically receive those, the city bank, but this is regarding an industrial revenue bond.
Yes.
And so we have limited authority or no authority, so we don't typically get that information.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Ms. O'Hara.
Thank you. I just want to remind the board of some quick statistics. In 2016, the amount of IRBs that the money that was diverted from public coffers was $22.8 million. In 2020, it was $43.9 million. And in 2021, it is $53.2 million. This is an alarming trend line as to how much in property taxes is being diverted, and that causes a shift of burden to existing businesses and to residential real estate. The other thing, I just got a copy of all of the active TIF districts in Johnson County, and it's approximately 30 pages. And the total amount is $2,800,000. Oh, wait.
I think
$2,800,000 and 454 and 570. This is an amazing amount of real estate that is under these TIF districts, and this is 30 pages of TIF districts that this board has allowed to go through without, we've only had one vote, as I understand, on any TIF districts. This is alarming, and we have many issues coming up. Dark store theory is one that will continue to erode our tax base, and I just think that we need to have a robust conversation about it. And when you're looking at an IRB of 85%, that really does erode the tax base. So just for your information.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. I think additional information, the page report that you indicated breaks down into parcels the areas that are identified. So that would expand the number of items on that report.
That's correct.
So let's keep that in mind. I think also most of these reports do not carry the amount of new tax revenue that's generated by these decisions that the cities make. And I think unless we look at that information, we don't get an exact picture of the benefits of that activity. So,
Mr. Chairman?
yes.
Kind of a process clarification question on the Overland Park TIF. This is just for information. We do not have any intervention opportunity here. But the question I had was, when they, not just Overland Park, but generally redefine the boundaries, does the development clock start over again for the entire district, or just the part that's being added?
I can't say for sure, but my guess is it would be just the part that's added.
Okay.
But I cannot verify that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Further reports, County Manager?
Yes, thank you. So the next item is the latest Siri report, the County Economic Research Institute indicators. The February edition is attached to your memo, and December, some highlights. December 2021 unemployment rate was 1.7% compared to 3.8% in December of the previous year. December 2021 year-to-date single-family home sales were 11,894, which is very similar to the previous year. December year-to-date 2021 single-family building permits were up 31%, however, to 2,353. Total retail sales for Johnson County through November 2021 were $15.8 billion compared to $13.5 the previous year. And Chairman, would you like me to continue? See if there's any questions on those.
Mr. Chairman, a quick
Mr.
question.
Ashcraft.
Ms. Postoke-Ferguson, I have asked this question before. I was just wondering, at one level, it looks in some ways very good that unemployment is so low. Has there been any progress in terms of employment rates? Because at one time there were concerns that a number of people had withdrawn from the employment market. And I was wondering if that tracking and that reporting has improved or actually, I guess, been created on a more discrete basis rather than just aggregated information. Mr. Thompson.
Siri, we have asked Siri and Mid-America Regional Council to provide you an economic update here in the coming weeks. We're trying to fit it in before budget starts, so we can ask Siri to respond to that when they come.
Very good.
I don't know the answer.
You know, the other thing I think it's important to note is to look at the number of people who are employed, which is on the report. And that, I think recently, it's probably exceeded or been equal to the number of people employed prior to the pandemic. So that is good news, but I don't have an exact number, but
It's just that the vacancy rates seem to be persisting everywhere. And
for whatever reason.
Is it getting better or worse, or is it about the same?
Yeah, many employers are having difficulty. Ms. Hanslick?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that update, County Manager. And I'm glad to hear that you've been in conversation with Mark about having them come and give an update, because I was going to mention at this last Tuesday's Mark board meeting, Frank Lenk did give a report on the impact of the new census data and the trends in the metro area, especially for implications for the economic health of the region. And I'm just going to summarize. I won't do it as well as he did, but basically there's been movement. For example, people of color moved away from the areas of highest poverty concentration to suburban locations, and the white population moved out of the first suburbs and into other areas. So there's more of a spreading out of the population, which has had positive impacts on the economic health of the region. So I hope that Frank Lenk will discuss that when he speaks to us. So look forward to his presentation.
Thank you. Next item.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. Also, just to follow up a little bit with Commissioner Ashcraft's comments on unemployment. Next week, as a reminder, we do have a committee of the whole on workforce numbers. So we'll talk a little bit about trends, but also focusing on Johnson County government. So a little bit more to come. I'm not sure if they'll fully answer your question yet, but it'll start helping us understand the picture as we go into budget. The next item is regarding an update on Stepping Up initiative. You may recall in 2015, Johnson County co-hosted the launch of the National Stepping Up Initiative. The latest call to action, Set, Measure, Achieve, is to establish and reach measurable goals that demonstrate reduced prevalence of mental illness in jail. A team of staff from Sheriff's Office, Mental Health, JIMS, or our Justice Information Management System, DTI, or Department of Technology and Innovation, worked together to develop a Johnson County dashboard to publicly display data from 4 key measures: bookings in jail, length of stay, recidivism, and connection to care for persons with a serious mental illness. More information can be found on the county website, Stepping Up Initiative, Johnson County, Kansas, jocogov.org, and this was included in your memo. Mike Brower, Criminal Justice Coordinator, is available on Zoom if there's any questions, so I'll pause and see if there's questions.
Okay, questions? Mr. Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Postoke Ferguson, thank you. I, for one, am appreciative and excited about that effort and very much am supportive of it. And I would be interested offline, of course, learning more about the data utilization and how you envision integrating that into the decision-making process.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Certainly.
No other
We can set that
questions?
Thank you.
No other questions, will I continue?
Okay, next is Kansas Fights Addiction Grant Review Board appointment. And so I'm pleased to announce that Mike Brower, our Criminal Justice Coordinator, has been appointed by the Governing Board of the Kansas Association of Counties, or KAC, to serve as a representative to the Kansas Fights Addiction Grant Review Board. And you may recall that during the 2021 legislative session, House Bill 2079 was enacted, which included the Kansas Fights Addiction Act. This act prescribes a process for distribution of recovered funds from opioid litigation. So I'll pause and see if there's questions, and if not, I have one more item.
Okay, questions, Ms. Fast?
Yeah, Maury, and when you're talking about data, Commissioner Ashcraft, Riza Handberg, she was our director. She did a really great brief. If you could email that out. I mean, she really goes through I'm going back to the Stepping Up initiative, that was a national publication that she did.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Fast, for that question or comment. And to that end, I am working right now with Mike Brower, the Criminal Justice Coordinator, to provide the board an update. We've got 3 new board members who I don't think have really been exposed to the great work that Johnson County has done over the last, almost 2 decades now. Very, very impressive work. Talking about publication, that one, we were just cited in another national publication this week. So again, Micah and I are working right now on a presentation to the board to fully demonstrate, again, the creative and forward-thinking things that we're doing here in Johnson County.
Okay, other questions? Ms. O'Hara?
Yeah, I would just make a comment that I know that deaths from opioid overdose has skyrocketed and I believe has exceeded 100,000 per year. And from what I have read, this is in response to the stress that mitigation of COVID has brought on. And I think that we just need to be very cognizant that actions of the government has created a lot of issues, and it is going to be expensive and from monetary and from the human capital aspect, that we're going to have to be digging our way out of this. And I just think that we all need to be very cognizant that our actions has actually contributed to this. So thank you.
I don't think there's any question that the pandemic has had an impact, but the impact goes back much, much further than 2019 or when the pandemic began. So it's the opioid issue goes back many years. All right, next item.
Okay, final item is we're excited to announce that the renovated Central Resource Library reopened its doors this week on Tuesday, February 22nd. I know several commissioners were there. Some improvements include more study and conference rooms, an expanded relocated kids area with more natural light, window seating, and story time room, a new drive-through for patron returns and holds pickup, enhanced materials handling efficiencies, which are anticipated will result in materials being available for patrons more quickly throughout the entire library system. And with that, Chairman, I'm done with my report. Thank you.
Commissioner Hanslick and I had the opportunity to attend the grand reopening of the Central Library. And I should note there one large area which is now dedicated to children's section in that library. So good job. Ms. O'Hara.
Yes. What are the requirements as far as masks and distancing for the library? Are all of those lifted now, or do we still have requirements?
County Manager, can you speak to that? I assume it's optional.
As far as I know, they've followed my lead on the other departments, saying that it is no longer required, but I don't know that for sure, because there are specific programs that directors have, when there's more interaction with the public, sometimes they've chosen to do that. So I'm not sure if Joe Connor is aware or anybody else in the room, but we can certainly find out and get back to you.
Well, at the grand opening, I think most of the staff were wearing masks. Many of the public were not. So again, my sense is it is optional. So, all right. Anything else, County Manager?
That's it for my report. Thank you.
Okay. Now moving to other reports. Let's see. We have
Chair, we now have the 2022 Revaluation Report.
Mr. Appraiser, always a lot of news. Bo, welcome. Thanks for being here. And
Good morning, Chairman and fellow commissioners. My name is Bo Bovee, Johnson County Appraiser, here to give you your overview of the 2022 valuations that have been mailed either last week for commercial or this coming Monday for residential. As you can see, overall on the chart, new construction and reappraisal growth, we had a very strong reappraisal growth this year. Specifically in the residential area and in the apartment area. Residentially, the problem we're having or seeing out there is there's no inventory. So therefore, there are 4, 5, 6, 7 buyers per every house that comes on the market. And it's becoming a bidding war, and therefore the value that they're asking for, the original selling price, is actually going to be sold for more than that. And that has really upped the values this year. I anticipated last year that we would see about 6.5, and obviously I was not very close. So this is what the market is. People want to be in Johnson County. We have good schools. We have good services. It's a great location, and therefore it's just a high demand. And so therefore you're seeing such a large increase this year. Even with coming out of COVID, it's just people want to be here because of what we have to offer. We did see 1.09% increase in new construction, which is about the norm for what we've seen over the last 7 years. So that really didn't change a whole lot, and I think that's one of the reasons why we have the issue with lack of inventory, is because we're not seeing more new construction by developers to speculate for the market. So, sales questionnaires, of course, they're required to fill out a sales questionnaire when they do a sale, and this year you can see we're at 17,080. Last year, we had the 18,172, which was the record high for the last 10 years. This year almost made that same record. So there was a lot of transactions that goes with the fact that you saw the significant increase in the valuations. Residential building permits, we had 2,336 building permits this year total. That's the most we've had since before 2015. It's just a lot of people wanting to be here, the opportunities to try to get something going, and therefore you're seeing that. A lot of that, of course, is probably in the actual multifamily construction, not in the single family, but it still is filled into the same group because it's still all residential properties. This map here gives you the percent change that occurred by our models throughout the county. You can see only one area was in the 20% increase for an average. That's down in the Spring Hill area. I think the public needs to understand when they see 20% increase, they start to panic and think that's huge. But Spring Hill was actually the second lowest area for an average starting point for a value for a residential home. So when you add 20% to $300,000 versus 20% to a $500,000 or $600,000, it's a lot lower percentage dollar amount. So even though the actual percentage looks scary, it's actually not that bad when you actually break it down to the dollars. You can see a lot of yellow and orange, which is what you would expect to see with an 11% increase overall for the county. I would like to point out, though, Market Area 8 and 2, which is in Commissioner Fast's area, that had always been one of the hottest areas for growth every year. This time, it actually has dropped down to the 8.99% or less range. So that's kind of an interesting change that's occurred in the Northeast. I'm not sure if that's going to happen going forward, but usually when I talk to people about the valuations, what happens in the community is it's like a pond. You throw a rock into the pond and you get these waves of effect. And usually the biggest effect is right where the rock hits the water. Well, for many years, the Northeast was the center of the rock hitting the ground if this was water. And so their growth was always much higher, but now that's seeing that expand to other parts of the county. So you're starting to see some of that moving into Shawnee, northern Overland Park, and even Spring Hill, because the land there is relatively inexpensive still. There's actually a lot of work building going on down there because of that. So that's an interesting map just to kind of get a picture of what went on. Residentially, here's what the market looks like in terms of the reappraisal cycle. You can see since 2018, we've been thinking we're at the peak of the residential market, and we are still thinking we're at the peak of the residential market. Again, inventory, I think, is our biggest issue. We need to see a much higher supply line to go with that demand to help balance out that growth as it relates to the market. Residential value growth and new construction. So this is just the residential. You can see 11.91 in growth of just residential. And you got 0.87 in new construction. Again, you're not seeing the inventory being created to account for the need and the desire to move to Johnson County. 97.5% of all residential properties did see an increase, and the average was about 11%. So therefore, remember when you're talking about the average is also affected by where those come from. So if you take all the sales into an array, the more higher sales you have, the higher your average is. And I think the fact that it's at 11% also indicates that a lot of the sales that occurred were more in the upper end range for the homes, not in the lower end range of the homes. So therefore, it skews the number a little bit, but it is still the actual number of the average. You can see 2.4% of the properties actually decreased, and then 0.12%, no change. That's how active this market was. It's just unbelievable how busy it is. But we're not the only one dealing with that issue. Across the country, you can look and see the markets across the country are going through the same thing. So what does the average appraised value look like to the average sale price? As you can see, for the average sale price was $427, which is the green bar. The average value for our properties that we valued is only $401,000. We have to meet a state statutory requirement of being what they call a sales ratio study. Our values have to be within 90 to 110% of the actual values of the sales. So when we're looking at that meeting at 427, we need to be at least 90% close to that or 110 above it. Well, we try to shoot for 92 to 94% every year. And this year, we're right at 94% at the 401 for an average. So we're right where we need to be to meet all the requirements for the Department of Revenue, who we answer to as it relates to our valuations. The average selling price versus new and existing, here's where it kind of skews it to that 11%. You can see that for new, which is a green bar, $610,000 was the average sale price for a new home, whereas an existing home was only $426,000. So you're looking at a significant gap between what was existing and what is brand new. And of course, the fact that those new ones are pulling basically a 20%, 35% above the others, that's skewing that 11% as well. So, but it is really what it is for our market. Commercially, we had a 4.29% increase in the commercial area. You can see last year we were negative 0.53. So this is a good sign that even though we're coming out of COVID, we're also starting to see some activity in the commercial area too, which is good. And we were hoping to see that. I think 4% coming out of 2 years of COVID is a strong increase and shows some confidence in the commercial world. Commercially, you can see our evaluation for growth, for revaluation was 4.29%, and our new construction was 2.38. That's a solid new construction growth for what we've experienced over the last 2 years. Now, a lot of those are projects that finished. They were maybe on at 50% last year or at 25%, and now they're at 100%. So a lot of that growth was continuous completion of projects that were out there. But I still think that's a good sign that they're able to complete those projects and get them on the rolls and now make them available for rent and for leasing purposes. Commercially, 86.4% did go up. Now, they're, of course, at 4%. A lot of them are in the 1.5% to 2% range. But again, it's positive growth. It's not the negative we saw last year. You saw 4.9% was a decrease. And then we had 8.8% that actually was a no change. So in the retail area, we saw that peak up a little bit this year, so that's good. We think it's a positive movement in retail. Retail is such a mixed bag, but overall, it looks like the retail has improved some, but that doesn't mean that it's where it needs to be as it was a couple years ago. But it was a positive growth for retail. The retail market still put on 208,000 square feet of more retail space. Now, some of that's been remodeled, some of that is brand new, but again, when you think about the fact that we are struggling with businesses, having enough people to get their work done, having employees, you're thinking about coming out of COVID and the restrictions they went through, we still saw a healthy increase in square footage this year for commercial properties. In office again is another mixed bag. Some businesses are struggling with whether they're going to come back into office space or whether they're going to stay remote with their employees, but yet we still saw some positive growth in the office area as a whole. But it's also the one we know, other than a hotel, we have the least amount of confidence of where it's going to go next year or the year after. Because until the businesses make up what their business model is going to look like in terms of going forward, are they going to be remote? Are they going to be hybrids, or are they going to be in the office? Until those decisions are finalized by those businesses, it's going to be hard to tell what kind of office space is still out there or available. You can see we only had 81,000 square feet of new office space completed or built this year. It's the lowest you can see over the last 7 years. I think that's one reason why we're concerned about what the future may be with office, because there's not a large confidence indicator right now that office space is important. And so until that changes, we'll have to see, but we don't know yet what that's going to look like. Industrial, well, they're the ones carrying the back of the valuation for commercial. Since 2016, they have been, quote, at the peak of growth, and they're still growing. Especially with COVID, with the fact that people were becoming more online buyers and less interacting with the actual retail stores. There's a high demand for more retail, more industrial, wholesale warehouses. Therefore, I don't think that market's going to go away. Plus, where we're located, you've got the rails, you've got the airlines, and you've got, the streets and the freeway system. So you have great ability to transit products in and out of this area and then to ship them across the country. We're relatively close to the center of the country in that aspect, so. Industrial market, we still saw 2.1 million in square feet for new industrial this year. So again, I think that market is very strong. There's a lot of confidence in the industrial warehouse area, and I don't see that going away in the near future. Apartments, well, since 2014, we think we're at the peak. We have no idea where that's going to go with the apartments at this point in time. Every year we think it's hit the top, and again, we're incorrect, because we're still looking at close to 8,000 units on the boards right now to either be platted, to be built, or to be leased out right now, potentially in the future. And then we still put on about 2,000 plus units this year. So again, apartments are just a hot commodity. People want to live here, but they can't quite afford the homes, so therefore they're doing the luxury apartments. That's what's happening. Apartment market, you can see we added one 1,100 new units this year. And here's where it looks like we're looking at proposed units of about 9,000 out there still so far. So there's a lot of potential growth in the apartment area this year and the next few years. Hotel, this one is still a struggle. This is one of the toughest hit areas, and it's still really struggling this year. We're saying it's starting to hit the contraction point because it's 2 years in a row now, their growth has actually either been real negative or very static. And so we see them in the contraction mode. There's been very little travel until recent months. Therefore, there's a lot of people not renting them. So there's a lot of them open, a lot of empty units, running about 60 to 70% filled on an average over the last 9 to 10 months. That's not where they need to be. They need to be at 85 or 90 on a regular basis, and so they haven't even got there yet. And then you can see 0 construction on hotels this year. So that's a really good indicator that they are struggling. We do know, however, a lot of them are doing the remodels because they can basically close a whole floor, remodel it, and then since they're only renting about 60% anyway, they still have ability to bring some income in, but then they're turning around and remodeling what's not. So even though they're not getting, quote, a lot of business right now for income, they are taking the time to do their remodel projects, which they do every few years anyway. So they're taking advantage of that. So there is some activity at the hotels, and just not in that aspect. Personal property. We went down again another 3% from previous years. Remember, we talked about this before. Since June of 2006, most business personal property was exempt from that point on, brand new or coming in. So really what we're taxing is the old personal property. And this is just going to keep going down because as we get further and further away from 2005 and so forth, that stuff is going to be archaic, outlived its use, and that number is just going to keep shrinking at this point in time. Abated properties, total appraised value for IRBs and EDXs, you can see we have 1.7 million, which is basically $1 billion, that is sitting out there right now for the exempt. And then we have for non-exempt, we have 799 million that's available in that. Active IRBs and EDXs, we're at 119 this year for the county. And Olathe has the most at 35. Edgerton is 27. The next has got 20. You got 12 for Shawnee, and then you have 6 for Overland Park. So those are the big cities that have the IRBs and the EDX bonds. And then I have questions, if you have any questions for me.
Well, thank you, Bo. Could you outline when property owners are expected to receive their reappraisal notice, and for those who wish to appeal, what that process is?
Yes, sir, Chairman. So we mailed out our commercial properties last Monday, and their deadline date for filing appeal is March 16th. And then for residential, we're mailing this coming Monday, the 28th, and their deadline date for filing an appeal is the 30th. On the back of their actual notice of value is the form that they can fill out for an appeal, for an in-person appeal. And we have, for this year, because of the COVID and stuff, we're offering the evidence, decision by evidence. So if they turn in their evidence, we'll actually make a decision without having an official meeting, or we're doing them by telephone. We are limiting the number of in-person ones just to be safe as it relates to people's concerns with the pandemic. But we do have some available nights and afternoons when we are doing in-persons. But we're not having the same type of open schedule that we've had in the past,
So all of the in-process information will be on the back of the information that they receive, is that right?
Yes, sir. It is on the
Okay.
back side of their notice of value.
Let me ask you another question, and I guess to some extent this is problematic, but there's always a number of appeals that become effective, and that has an impact on the overall average appraisal. Can you give us a hint as to what historically has happened in that regard?
Sure, yes, sir. Typically, we run between 6,000 and 8,000 total appeals per year, which is less than 1% of the total properties that are noticed. If we looked at the last 7-year average, we usually have reductions at just under 3% of the total value. Most of the residentials, about 50% of the residentials do see some type of a reduction. Usually it's because we have a component wrong, or they did something to the property we didn't know about, or they have a new water leak issue in their basement that we aren't notified of, and so when they bring it to our attention, we make those adjustments. Commercially, a lot of our changes, which is about 22% of the total number that appeal, are usually some type of a component issue again, or our listing issue that we did not have correct, or a square footage issue that we haven't marked wrong. So we do encourage for the appeals if they think there's something that looks wrong or incorrect about their property, because we can easily look at it, and if it's wrong, we'll definitely fix it. We have a pretty good record for fixing them, and that's what the appeal process is all about. When we're doing mass appraisal, we can get about 85 to 90% correct within the window of that, at 90 to 110%. Those outliers are either too low or too high. We rarely ever hear from the people that are undervalued, but we definitely want to hear from those that are overvalued, because we need to fix our data so that we can get the correct number.
All right, well, I think it's important, you know, the 11% is an average. So there are properties that are higher than that. There are properties that are lower than that. And so when based upon historic appeals, that number might be 9% or 8.5% average versus the 11%. But again, everybody should understand that's average, so yours might be different.
Correct.
Ms. O'Hara, you have a question?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bo, can you go into Spring Hill a little bit more in depth? The increase was 20% on the sales, but the reappraisal increase average, what was that also 20%?
No, the increase in value was 20%. The sales increase was about 12, I think, the 13%. And that's because, like we looked in the one chart about the new versus old.
Right.
So a lot of what sold there were the newer ones. But everything goes up with the market, right? So the 20% was homes that are in the 200 to 50,000, which is what the average for Spring Hill is. So when you take 20% of that, it's about $2,500 roughly in actual value that comes in. So it's not, when you hear the percentage, that's why I shared about it, you got to look at the dollar amount change, because the dollar amount makes more sense to property owners than the percentages.
Correct, but this is going to, if the mill levies aren't rolled back, this is going to reflect a average 20% increase in the property taxes, correct?
If everything were to stay the same.
Yes.
Which since
And
I
I
don't do the property tax side of it, I can't answer that
Right.
question.
And
If everything stayed as is from this year, from last year, you would theoretically see a 20% increase. However, once you actually do the math off the assessment ratio, it may not be exactly 20%.
But it's in the vicinity of 20%.
Somewhere around.
And I know that Spring Hill, over the past 5 years, the taxpayers, the property taxes have gone up very, very rapidly. And this is a huge impact on families. They've moved to Spring Hill, and they thought that their property taxes were at one level. And, I mean, a possible 20% jump in 1 year is very staggering. And then on apartments, the average increase was 22%. Is that correct?
Yes, roughly for apartments. They're a very hot commodity right now.
Do you have any idea what percentage of the new construction is under TIFs or EDRBs?
I have not looked into that depth of that, no. I provided a list of all the TIFs that exist, but I don't have the details
Okay.
2022, because that information for 2022 really doesn't show up until we get into the fall,
Correct.
winter.
All right.
Because we just finished the 2021
Right.
stuff right now.
Okay, all right. Well, I just want to caution the board as we go forward on our budget that these are real lives that are going to be impacted as far as these tax increases, and that we have to be very diligent. And the inflationary pressures are enormous. And on residential, I am assuming that the reason that the construction industry is not responding is due to supply chain, because I know this industry very well, and if where there's demand, normally you see the construction industry to step up. But obviously there's very, very numerous issues on the supply chain, and I'm just assuming that that is what is impacting that.
Okay.
That might be impacting to some degree, but when you look at that chart, we've been right around 1.25, 1.35% of new construction for the last 7 years. So it's hard to say that it's only because of what's happened recently, because the same percentage has been consistent for multiple years. So I really don't have an answer as to why the developers don't have more inventory out there. That's really something you'd have to ask them.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I would say, at budget time, when we receive the budget information and the proposed budget from the county manager's office, the level of the tax rate and is always of significant concern to the commission. Mr. Ashcraft?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I have several incidental questions. I'll direct the first one to you, and please feel free to lateral it to Bo, but I was looking at apartment markets, and apartments and the building of apartments is market-driven. I think anyone would argue that. But is there a resource that tracks occupancy? Because I'm just wondering if we can get any sense of when that may be peaking. Because sometimes you have to build several years in advance, and occupancies don't necessarily meet that. And I was just wondering if anyone tracks that, or if Mr. Beauvais tracks that.
We don't specifically track it every year or every week, but we certainly have the resources to look it up.
Okay.
There are at least one, maybe two organizations in the metro area which probably would have that kind of information available, industry.
Well, you would think so. So it's just kind of a context issue. The second question, Mr. Beauvais, on slide 17 on the office market, it's distressing, but I was wondering if there is any way, or if you have any sense of what the office market demand in the Gardner New Century area is, because we do have some office space available. But I'm just wondering, is it robust in that part of the county, or is that diminished number kind of dispersed, is my question?
That's really not one of the hot spots for the office, unfortunately.
Yeah, okay. I figured as much. And the last question, Mr. Beauvais, it's indirectly related, but I think it impacts your presentation. Do you have any update for us, or will you have any update for us related to the so-called dark store litigation that's been progressing through whatever process that the courts demand of it?
Yes, sir. Right now, we're at the Kansas Supreme Court. Our attorneys have finished their brief, but that's all I know at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, other questions, Ms. Fast?
Yeah, I'd like to highlight when you talked about the Northeast not going up as much, but Roland Park Mission are 17%. It's the Mission Hills that is only 4%. So when you put in, very high dollar houses that don't have the inflation, but your first time home buyer houses are still skyrocketing. Prairie Village, which is interesting, which has been the hot spot in North Old Leawood, wasn't as much. Can you talk about, I mean, we're still seeing a ton of new tear downs and new construction. I see it now in Mission, Westwood. I mean, does that level out like we're seeing in Prairie Village with that new, when you have all these tear downs amidst houses built in the 1960s?
The leveling out would be the fact that you're removing an older structure and putting up a new structure. And so when you do that, of course, your new structure is going to have a much higher demand, and it's also going to bring a much higher dollar amount when it sells. Like the one chart I showed with the new construction versus the existing. So unfortunately, what happens is they buy the $400,000 home that is existing, let's say in Prairie Village, and then they decide they want to build their own home. So then they tear it down, and then they build a brand new one. So what happens is that then shifts everything in that community overall, because now we're balancing a $700,000 home with other $750,000 homes or $500,000 homes with a handful of lower end $400,000, $350,000 homes in that market area, which makes it, one goes up a little bit, one goes down a little bit. It's called, the super adequacy of a neighborhood. So we're trying to statistically level out the values in a relationship for what's there, square footage, quality, whatever. So even though, there's still activity there, for us, we're seeing the fact that they kind of went blue for the first time, shows that something there is changing from what was there in previous years in terms of their perception. So they are paying a little bit less for whatever reason.
So right now, we're at the top of the housing market. Within a year, can that go way down? I mean, in 2008, we had this housing crash, but normally it just inches down. It doesn't do a drastic crash like we saw in 2008.
Correct. And you don't want to see a crash, because if you see a crash, it really messes up the whole process as it relates to valuation, as well as the taxation piece as well, because your schools and whatever go from this number to this number in 1 year. That is hard to make up off of just making a tax levy change. So you want to, if it's going to start to go down, you want it to go down based on that cycle that you see in the charts, it's real estate cycle. You want it to go down gradually over time, stabilize, and then start its second cycle of growth is what you really want to have see. That way you keep everything relatively the same and very easy to work with as it relates to taxing jurisdictions when they're trying to figure out what their services need to be. If you have a drastic drop like what happened in 07 and 08, you basically decimate your ability to have the funds to do the services. Then you have to make really tough decisions about what services can and can I not offer as a jurisdiction. And that gets to be very difficult to do but when it's gradual, you're able to make better adjustments down the road.
I just want to thank Bo and Jennifer. Both have just been incredible providing constituent services and being responsive to my constituents who have seen, just a lot of fluctuations because of tear downs. And you just get back, right away. You do your research, you help, you listen, you call, you schedule appointments. I just can't thank you both enough. And, so many of my constituents, once you talk to them, they understand it and then they're fine. And it's that listening and helping them understand their valuation. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm certainly not an expert on the housing market. Some of the recent data I've seen with 30-year mortgages at approximately 4%. The suggestion was that as they approach 6%, that's going to cause a slowdown in the housing market, and that probably has a direct impact on the apartment market. If you cannot afford a home or you can't afford the down payment, then you're accessing alternative living sources, which would be apartments. So. Ms. Allenbrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm going to echo those words that you just said, that I've done a lot of research on apartments. At one point in time, looked into developing them, and some of it is also lifestyle. You're seeing a huge trend changing not only in Johnson County, but other states as well, that people like to live in a work, play, walk area that is a community lifestyle. And the shortages of the higher-end apartments is still out there with all the apartments that are being developed. And for Mr. Ashcraft, there is a couple of organizations that do, if you go out for financing, just like you, if you would build an apartment, there are some organizations out there. I don't have the number anymore, but if you want it, I could get it for you. Because there is there's a metric system that they use for that. I just want to say thank you as well, because I know there's been a lot of questions about property tax, and I appreciate everything you're doing and also going out into the public, giving those presentations. I just talked to a realtor, I was talking to one last night, and the frustration level of not having any inventory on the market. And this realtor told me that they put they now have, just to let you know, the home is coming on the market. And they said that a couple came in and give such an unbelievable bid, the family took it, and they never even got it on the market. So, you know, and then I have another friend who put her house up on the market, and within 24 hours, she had 35 offers. She lives in Roland Park, and she sold her home within 24 hours. So it's crazy out there. But also, when we talk about revenue, I really appreciate the previous commission, you know, looking at that dark store theory and keeping that in reserve so that we're not hit all at one time. So I really appreciate that.
Okay, well, I would also emphasize this because I get these questions on an annual basis. The activities and the process that is followed by the county appraiser's office is based upon state requirements, state statute, and oversight by the state of Kansas. The commission does not have any activity in dictating process or how activities are handled. It's all based upon state requirements. So I just want to make sure everybody understands that. So, Bo, thank you very much. Excuse me, Ms. O'Hara.
Yeah, just one comment. Yeah, this is going to be very interesting to watch the rise of interest rates and the activity, because people right now that are in homes are locked in with very low rates. And it may be that that will pad the decrease in valuations, possibly, because of people's reluctance to actually move because they have such a good interest rate. So this is going to be interesting to watch this. But again, I think that all of us have to be extremely cognizant of every dollar that we expend, because this has a direct impact on the family budget, and there are so many inflationary pressures currently on everyone, businesses, individuals. I mean, we are in a very, very extreme situation at this moment. So thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, next item.
Chairman, this
excuse-
is the clerk. Could we please have a 5-minute break?
Okay, all right. We'll take a 5-minute break and come back for the balance of our agenda. At this time, we will reconvene from our recess. Last week, there were some questions about the Public Health Department and relationships with child care facilities. And so at this time, we'll ask for that report. Dr. Ariola, are you ready?
Yes, Chairman. Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. With me this morning is our Deputy Director, Charlie Hunt, and our Director of our Child Care Licensing Program, Eldona Chestnut. Eldona is going to do the presentation, and I'll come back and make final comments, and then we'll take questions from you. Eldona?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to share information with you all. Before I get into presentation, I'd really like to take a chance to thank daycare providers. When people are thanking essential workers from the COVID pandemic, they often leave out providers. And childcare licensing providers are an essential service, and I just want to take the time to thank them. So next slide, please. So first, I thought I would give you an overview of how we, as Johnson County Department of Health and Environment Child Care Licensing Division, fit with the overall state requirements. So 65508 is the statute where child care licensing, regulation, et cetera, lives. And so basically we at our department are contracted with KDHE, and that is an annual renewal. So basically we have several areas within our contract of what we are responsible for. So they fall into the pre-application activity, which is basically the recruitment, the providing orientation to providers, providing them resources, helping them to get ready to submit an application. Application activity is once they've actually attended the orientation and they're actually in the process. Again, that's helping them connect with the people they need to connect with, such as the fire departments. They have to have fire department approval as well as city approval, as well as follow all the licensing, childcare licensing regulations. So it's helping them get through that, getting everything together so they can get their application submitted. The next piece we're responsible is inspection activity. And the first part is pretty self-explanatory. We are actually the ones that are going out and doing the visits. We are to all the different types of facilities in Johnson County. And we are more or less, you could say, the boots on the ground. So we're essentially, because of our contract, we are the agent of KDHE. So we're going in and we're doing all the initial inspections, the annual inspections, compliance checks, complaint visits, and technical assistance visits. Additionally, technical assistance, not only helping them to come into compliance, but stay in compliance, but also helping them with resources and helping them answer questions that come up. If they have a scenario in their facility that they're really not for sure how to handle, then they reach out to us and we help them with that. And so the whole goal of licensing itself is to keep kids in healthy, safe, happy learning environments. And that's the basis of our regulations. Another area that we're responsible for is complaint activity. So anytime that anyone calls in a complaint and it is regulatory in nature, then we go out and we do an inspection. And we can get complaints in from anyone. We've had them from neighbors, from repair people, from parents, from other providers. It just wherever, if it is regulatory in nature, then we are the ones that address that issue. We go out, we do the visit, we talk to all the involved, whether that be staff, whether that be providers, parents, reporters, et cetera. We do also work in conjunction with other partners for those complaint investigations, such as DCF, law enforcement, and even the district attorney's office. And that is mainly in regards to illegal childcare, which means unlicensed childcare, or when there has been a serious injury or death in a childcare that they're something that's being investigated, and we work with them on the prosecuting of that. Another area of our contract is community outreach activity. So, and that is classes, and we offer classes for daycare providers. We offer classes for the public, for parents. We put out information on what is childcare licensing? Where do you go for resources? Where can you find help? What if I have a question in my daycare? What if I don't know if this is right or if this is wrong? And additionally, we also have, can refer them to the database, state database that helps them to identify the compliance history of their facility. So we're also in that area helping parents to connect with quality daycares. Next slide. So then I thought I would kind of narrow it down for you just a little bit. It seemed like a lot of the question was around disease investigation, disease reporting, and guidance on these situations. So even prior to COVID, we have been helping our providers to work their way through any kind of situation, including diseases. There are, in statute, there are certain exclusions and quarantine periods, et cetera. So with ours, within regulation, what we have, you can see this first one said that the regulation requires that all communicable diseases in daycare facilities be reported to the county health department within the next working day. So we work very closely with our communicable disease staff and our epi staff so that if it gets reported to my division, then we make sure that the disease investigators have that information and vice versa. So again, it's a very close working relationship. There have been situations prior to COVID where there was a disease outbreak, and so my staff would go out to the facility along with disease investigators to help them investigate that situation, as well as to make sure that the providers had the correct information they needed. They were able to help protect their staff and the other children in the facility, and that they were, for the positive case, how long did they need to be out? When was it safe for them to come back? As well as what kind of cleaning and what kind of sanitizing, what else did they need to do to protect the kids in their facility? The next regulation that's highlighted talks about the responsibility that communicable staff, that if a child is absent, that the parent needs to notify the facility, and then the facility notifies us. And that is for any communicable disease. It's reportable and communicable. So we have certain reportable diseases that have sometimes much shorter time frames for reporting, sometimes as short as 4 hours. But any kind of communicable disease, whether it be pink eye, whether it be those are the communicable, not reportable. So if the facility starts having hand, foot, and mouth, if they start having, a run of any of these diseases, and they don't, then they need our assistance. They need help with how do they deal with this situation? What do they do to keep their facilities safe? So that is, again, that is in our regulations. We also have another regulation that I cited for a requirement for the infectious and contagious diseases. And again, that is connected to KAR 28-1-6. So again, we have that responsibility, the providers have that responsibility to make sure that they're keeping their children and their staff safe. Okay, next slide, please. So then kind of narrowing it down even a little bit more specific to COVID-19. So there is obviously as I mentioned, we are the agent of KDHE, so that we are there, the ones that are helping the providers, helping them to understand the best thing to do, helping them to stay in compliance with regulations and statutes. KDHE early on had said that, especially in COVID related, and they've done this with other processes as well, that we are the local. So providers are told to look to us for their support and their guidance and to have their questions answered. So KDHE, and when COVID started coming out, they told providers, we're going to have frequently asked questions. We may have some overarching guidance, but you need to go to your local health department and follow the guidance they have, because what works in Johnson County may not be appropriate for somebody that is in a county out on the Colorado border. So KDHE Child Care Licensing has told providers that they need to look to their local health department. So again, even on the fact that when the COVID started coming out, started hitting centers and homes, and we were in contact with KDHE, and they said, yes, we agree that sometimes those short temporary closures are the best things, that is what needs to happen to keep the kids and the providers and the community safe. So they have actually a form on their website that when a facility closed on a temporary basis, there's a form that they fill out on the KDHE website that says, here's what's going on, and when they reopen. So they're able to kind of keep track of that. We also track that at the local level. So I just wanted to make sure that you were aware that TDHE Childcare Licensing is aware of our guidance and aware of our support and is very supportive of everything that we're doing. Next slide, please. So just to kind of let you know, as I mentioned, that we work very closely with our disease containment and our EPI staff. And with COVID, that relationship became much stronger, probably at least once or twice a day. I'm talking with someone from their teams. And so this is when we decided early on with COVID, when it first started really impacting childcare centers and daycare homes, and providers were calling, going, what do I do? What do I do? I need help. Please help me with this. Please provide guidance. And that they're working 10 and 12 hours a day for the most part, and they don't have the time to sit and research all of these various sites and to kind of delve through all the material and try to keep up to date and current with everything. So we, in collaboration again with our disease investigators and our EPI staff, put together written guidance and technical assistance to providers. We also, I felt that it was important that providers had somebody that they could get a quick answer from. So I installed in our division a childcare hotline. And so basically what that means is Monday through Friday during normal business hours, we have a dedicated number that childcare providers can call. And that number rings to every one of my surveyors as well as my desk. And so anybody that's in the office and my staff that is educated and trained on the guidance can pick up the phone and they can answer that provider's question right away. We, at the peak of the Omicron especially, I had to assign 2 staff to man that hotline. And that was full-time, Monday through Friday, 8 to 9 hours a day. The phone was ringing almost nonstop. Providers were going, please help us. What do? We need guidance. I would say fortunately, and I'm very happy to say our calls have decreased because our numbers have decreased. You can always tell when things change because we get, we answer a question, we put the guidance together, we knit the new guidance out. Providers start getting comfortable with what they need to do. Okay, I got it. I know what I'm doing. I appreciate what you're saying. And then something happens like Omicron hit or when Delta hit previously, or all of a sudden they're seeing a big change. So we see our phone calls start going up again. So those are the kinds of times that are triggers for us that, okay, we need to make sure that we're updating our written guidance so that they have something to provide and come back and look at and know where they're at. Another piece that we put in place that actually Elizabeth, which you all have speak to frequently, she graciously assigned a EPI to our division. So we have a contact that if any of our situations that person, we reach out to them and they're our main contact, they're available to us. Additionally, we now have 2 contractors that are assigned to our division, just for our division, that are helping us with the contact tracing. If we need to do that, they're helping us with disease investigation. They're helping to support our providers in that sense. And additionally, we meet on a weekly basis with those folks, and so that we can say, okay, what's going on in childcare right now? What are the things we need to address? Are there concerns? Especially we look at outbreaks. So if there is 3 or more cases in a facility, and especially if it's increasing, which unfortunately some do, then we're looking at those specific instances and what resources or what assistance can we provide to that daycare facility or that daycare home. Another thing we put in place early in the pandemic, again, when providers were desperate for guidance and information, is they created monthly childcare provider calls. And those are held by Zoom. And they're held once a month in the evening, so all the providers are able to attend. We have a standing agenda item that Elizabeth, our Director of Epidemiology, is on those calls every month. And each month she offers COVID guidance update. And then we always allow time for the providers to ask questions. And it can depend. Sometimes, when there's big changes, we may spend 30, 40, 45, 50 minutes just on answering those provider questions and helping them to reach a comfort level. Other times there may be fewer questions, but we do make sure that Elizabeth is always available, and she and her team are a huge support to my team and my childcare providers. Other things that we cover on that is information that the providers want or need as far as resources that are available to them, funding opportunities, classes, anything that that we feel that is important to them. We've also brought on other people that help them. We've had Johnson County Mental Health do presentations. We've actually brought on a federal representative to talk to providers about what's going on at the federal level regarding childcare funding, et cetera. So basically, and then with now, there's a lot of COVID dollars available to help support providers, either new providers just getting started or sustainability grants and other options. So we do make sure that we bring on people to those monthly calls that can give information to our providers that they definitely even, plus it gives them a chance to ask those questions. One thing I did forget early on, another thing we did when providers were saying that they couldn't get supplies, they couldn't get hand sanitizer, they couldn't get gloves, they couldn't get paper towels, any of those things that just weren't available in the stores because people were buying them up so fast. My staff and I worked in collaboration with the Casey Metro Child Care Task Force, and we were able to bring in supplies. We were able to, and Commissioner Hanslick, I have to thank you again because she was able to connect us with supplies to give out to child care providers. And the providers were so appreciative of that. So my staff and I were in on Saturdays, we were in on evenings, we were helping to distribute those supplies to providers when they were unable to get them. Next slide, please. So to kind of, a little said this a little bit before, but just in case you're not aware, there are several licensing categories. So there is one set of regulations that's licensed in group daycare homes. There's another set of regulations that child care centers, preschools, and Mother's Day Out, and another set of regulations for school age programs. So early on, we were creating guidance for the license and daycare homes, but we were kind of lumping the centers and school age programs together. However, that became clear that they had different needs, they had different situations. Most of our school age programs are actually located in school buildings, so in public and private schools. We do have a few freestanding school age programs, but we wanted to make sure and address those needs separately. So now that there is now separate school age program guidance just for them. And as far as our trigger, I pretty much mentioned that earlier. We try to make sure that the guidance is current. It is guidance, it is recommendations. And so when the mask mandate was in place, we did have that in there. When the mask mandate at the state and local level went away, we updated the guidance and took that out. So we do make sure that this is kept as current as we possibly can, so the providers have a copy that they can look at. They can, when you get busy and you just need something to go back and look and see what it is. So that's kind of what that is. So next slide, please. So we did, I think there was some question on exclusion guidelines, and I'm aware that, all the commissioners were provided a copy of our center guidance, and that's the most current one that went out February 11th. And there are two others. There's both the homes and the school age program. But in essence, what I wanted to share with you today is that when the pandemic first was going in effect and it was affecting childcare, a lot of our neighboring communities, my cohorts and other counties, if there was a case of childcare, a case of COVID in childcare, they would just shut down the whole facility right away. We are, I believe, very fortunate in the fact that we have a whole epidemiology division that was working with us, and we could look at the information, we could look at the science, we could see, okay, what can we do? So very early on, we implemented what's called cohorting. And just so that you're aware of what we're defining that as, what that means for us is that when there is a positive case in daycare, that doesn't immediately mean we shut down that classroom or even recommend shutting down the classroom. Because what we're doing is that the positive case is obviously out, and then we are allowing those kids that were already exposed, instead of just saying, oh, sorry, you've got to go home. If they're already exposed, and we're just helping the providers by telling them, okay, you keep this group together. Don't let, outside entities, don't be bringing in a music teacher or an art class or something for this time frame, because we want to keep those exposed kids together. And so that way they're still able to be in daycare, but they're not, hopefully not spreading it. And then you're also telling those kids when they're exposed to a positive case that you can come to daycare and you can be at home, but you really shouldn't be out in the community because you need to quarantine because you have been exposed. So I think that's been very successful for us. In fact, we've had other counties contact us and say, hey, tell me about this cohorting. How does that happen? But when we do see internal spread, then we feel like that, it's in the best interest of the staff and the children. It's spreading. Here's our recommendation. This is what we think is best based on the evidence and the science. This is what's best to do. I would say a very large percentage of our facilities will follow that without a question, and they appreciate our support and our guidance on that. If they do have questions, and we discuss it with them. Another thing we were able to start doing is once they got that second case or third case or fourth case, once that second case hit, we're like, okay, let's just investigate this a little bit further. Sometimes that actually would be our disease investigators taking the case and actually doing full investigation. And I might add that early on in the pandemic, my staff were actually trained to do disease investigation. And we were actually helping by taking those daycare cases and some other cases if we were caught up, actually doing the disease investigation. So we're trained on what to ask, how to ask, et cetera. So we would actually start investigating. And if there was an external exposure, so let's say the first case was exposed to a positive parent. The second case, no connection to this first case, and they have a positive parent or another known exposure, then we can, by case investigation, determine, okay, these two kids aren't exposed to each other. I mean, they didn't get an internal spread. So then we'll allow that facility to go, okay, we think you're okay to continue to cohort with this case. And another thing that we recently added that is called podding. So we're kind of seeing that in schools early on. There was some literature and some research, et cetera, that schools were successfully using the pod concept. So a few months back, Elizabeth said, well, why don't we try this in daycare? I think this is going to help us to keep kids in care. So some of our facilities, we had on our provider meeting, Elizabeth explained the whole concept to them. We put it in writing to them. We sent it out to them. We supported their questions. And so essentially what that means is that in some of our older kid classrooms, there may be 20 kids in there. So if we can break them down into pods, meaning maybe we can keep 4 to 5 kids together. And so when those kids are eating or they're sleeping, or trying to keep them in more smaller groups, then if there is a positive case, then we're not having to say, we really think what's best is to close the whole classroom, affecting 20 kids and multiple families, where, I think we can just keep this smaller so we won't have to affect just a fewer number. And I think that podding has been pretty successful for some of the facilities. Not all facilities have taken it on because it does take extra work on their part. And as I mentioned, our daycare providers are already overworked. They're already working short staff. They're working the long hours. So some of them just didn't have the capability or the space to be able to implement that. But of some of the facilities that they've seen it to be very successful, so that they haven't had to even look at the possibility of needing to close rooms. And so I think that that's been another benefit that we can offer to them. And then anyone in the classroom, like say, and masking it's certainly been a political issue. However, we do know that research has shown that masks can be effective if worn appropriately, and appropriate mask is the best they can have. We actually have provided masks to our childcare centers that requested them. So we have some childcare, we had the ability, again, through our task force, we were able to access some KN95 masks. And so we were able to distribute those to our daycare centers for their staff that wanted to wear them. Again, it is not a requirement. It is a recommendation, but because we know that that's going to help keep those facilities open, it's going to help keep staff working. It's going to have, parents are going to have a healthy, safe environment to put their kids in. So we're able to help to get those resources for the providers. We basically, as far as follow the American Academy of Pediatrics and the Community and Center for Disease Control and KDHE guidance regarding masking. room and, as again, I mentioned, room and facility closure recommendations are really kind of that last option. We try everything else. We try the screening, which I didn't mention that one of the KDHE screening, that every child that walks in, we're being screened for illness. And so we're trying all these things, all these mitigating measures. I know you've heard Elizabeth and Dr. Ariola talk about the Swiss cheese model. We've tried to implement that in childcare. So if we can put all these different mitigation measures in place, it's helped our childcare facilities to stay open. So I think that, Leroy, that was my last slide, if I'm correct. So I've
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Eldona,
That was very thorough.
Sorry, Chairman, go ahead. Yeah.
Go right ahead. Doctor, you have a closing comment?
Yes, I was just going to say thank you to Eldona and her team. As you can see, a lot of work, lot of efforts over the years. We obviously prioritized keeping our schools open. You will see parallels between resources and time devoted to keeping our daycares open, as you saw what we did with our schools and our long-term care facilities. Those were the three priorities that we had. Lot of work, daily work, weekly work. Really proud of what the team has done. And finally, just to reiterate what she said, the guidance that we put out there, very consistent with KDHE's, consistent with American Academy of Pediatrics guidance and CDC's guidance. And our responsibility does not change to keep every member of our community safe and keep the environment as healthy as we possibly can. And that's what we do with COVID. We're happy to take questions that you may have.
Questions? Ms. Hanslick.
Oh, thank you. I just wanted to thank, excuse me, Ms. Chestnut for that report. It's really helpful, and I appreciate everything you and your staff have done. I know that it's been extremely difficult for parents over the past couple of years, and it's been so important to keep those child care facilities open, especially for parents whose jobs really depend on their being there in person, who didn't have the option to work remotely, and also who are paid in such a way that they really can't afford to miss a day. So I commend you for looking for as many ways as possible to keep those child care facilities open. So thank you for that work.
Commissioner O'Hara.
Thank you. Okay, so I am coming to understand, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that there are different requirements for schools and for daycare because those are different categories, correct?
There are different guidance for schools and for childcare licensing, and like you rightly said, there's differences, subtle differences for school-age programs and others. So the quick answer to that is yes.
So preschools in public and private schools, they are under the jurisdiction of the schools, or are they under the jurisdiction of the Department of Health?
I'm not sure that I understand your question. If you're talking about public health,
I'm talking about regulations for schools. Those appear to be under the authority of the schools, and would that also include preschool programs?
I can answer that question. So it can be either. So if the facility is ran by the school district, if the school district itself has the preschool, they are the one that runs it, they're responsible for everything that happens in it, it can be by the school district. If many of our schools, however, will contract, or most all of our schools, contract with either YMCA or Johnson County Parks and Rec to run their programs, whether it be a preschool, whether it be a center license, or it be a school after school, the school age program, and those are all under child care licensing.
Okay, and that's under the licensing.
Correct.
Okay, and I just want to read from your publication that you sent out to the child care facilities. I believe it was February the 11th. Says JCHE strongly recommends that all staff wear masks regardless of vaccine status, including in classrooms and common areas. To ensure that staff are wearing masks properly, covering nose and mouth, Johnson County Department of Health recommends that accountability measures be put in place, including having program directors checking on mask-wearing compliance periodically throughout the day and empowering employees to respectfully remind each other when masks are not being worn appropriately. And then it goes on to say, when child care surveyors, and I'm assuming that that means inspectors from the Department of Health, is that correct?
That would be my staff, correct?
Okay. Enter a facility, there will be a written consultation on the NOSF. What's an NOSF?
Sure. And that's a requirement from KDHE. An NOSF is a notice of survey findings.
Okay.
So that is essentially the summary document we leave at the end of a visit.
Okay, regarding, there will be a written consultation on the NOSF regarding if masks are worn or not worn by staff. So this looks like that it's actually going over into a requirement, because are these surveys, are they published so that parents know if there is an issue in a daycare center?
So yes, so a couple of things there. So the statement that you just read, that was a directive from Child Care Licensing at Topeka that the consultation be added to each visit that we went into. And so that's why that part is there. So providers were aware that we would be doing that. A consultation, to define it, a consultation is not a violation. It is not saying that they, like ratios or something else would be. It is just saying, this is something that we need to make sure that you're aware of and that the surveyors have educated you on. To your other question, yes, KDHE does have a parent portal. So basically it's on the KDHE website, and parents go in, and we encourage parents to go in to that portal, and they can look up their facilities compliance history. Now, I would say consultations do not show. The consultations are just for the provider as a reminder, basically, hey, here we're discussing this and here's what it is. Those consultations do not show on the portal. What the parents would see is they would see the notice of survey findings. They would also be able to see any complaint investigation outcomes. So that's, yes, it is available to all parents.
Okay, and on this, and continuing on in this document, it says the Johnson County Health Department strongly recommends that children over the age of 2 should be encouraged to wear masks in the classroom as well as common spaces in the child care center. Since the BOCC has rescinded the public health order and we are not requiring masks, which we could never require anyway, but that's another subject, is the Department of Health considering rescinding this strong recommendations? There are so many negatives on requiring children 2 to 5 to wear masks. I mean, it's well known as to the issues that it causes, and they were never, ever under the public health order. So I was really shocked that the children of that age group was, strongly recommended to wear the mask. And these child care providers, you have to understand, they are very concerned about their status of licensing and strongly recommends to them, translates to many as a requirement. So what can we do to exit this this strategy of masking our babies? And then I have one other question. Have we ever instituted such requirements for the seasonal flu in these daycare centers?
Thank you, Commissioner. I would take your first question first to be very clear. The guidance that we have provided to our child care facilities, and I went again this morning prepping for this meeting to go and verify again, are consistent with recommendations from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and consistent with recommendations from American Academy of Pediatrics, and consistent with what working together with our own Children Mercy here from 2020, working with them as we were working through and developing this guidance. They actually had a guidance out of which we also worked off of. So that's pretty clear, and we can go back and forth as to what the pros and cons of wearing masks are for younger children. But again, what we have in here is very consistent with what experts in the field have recommended. That's the first. The second piece is our priority, and I think Commissioner Ansley put that very, very well, was to keep our childcare establishments open so that people can go to work. Doctors can go and treat patients, and nurses can work, and I think we have succeeded in doing that. The idea of strongly recommend is the same language that we're using across the county. Outside of mandate, we're strongly recommending that, and people that are listening, I want to again emphasize that we've consistently said we require multiple layers of preventive measures to be able to reduce the risk. And mask continues to be a very important part of that. Now, your point about editing mandates based on changes, policy changes that the BOCC does, I think Eldona did address that. We do that all the time. Once the mask mandate was off, we have modified the document to reflect that, but our existing stance is to continue to strongly recommend. Our childcare establishments, just like our schools, we need to ensure that 1 or 2 cases do not become 10 or 12. We need to do our best to keep our students safe and create environments where the children can be safe. We need to ensure that the staff work in a healthy environment. You did mention flu. I think Eldona did a good job talking about all the other communicable, reportable diseases that we deal with. By the way, for those that are listening, know that when she said disease containment, that's part of our department, DHE. We work together all the time to ensure that we can prevent outbreaks in our facilities. So it really is broad, but COVID was a pandemic. It's a different the level of thing that we have to deal with. Again, very proud of what Donna and her staff have done, and very proud of us succeeding in keeping our daycare largely open and keeping our children healthy and safe.
Okay, thank you very much.
Well, I just want one last point.
We have other questions. Go ahead if you have one more.
Yeah, thank you. So, Dr. Ariola, you see how strongly recommended comes from CDC, strongly recommended comes down to KDHE, and that makes you feel like that you are required to be strongly recommended, which goes down to the child care facilities, and they feel like that they're going to get the hammer if they don't comply. And these children, 2 to 5, to be masking them is just unconscionable to me. I just don't understand. So are the requirements for the daycare facilities that are not under the umbrella of a school, are they more stringent than the programs that are under the control of the school districts?
I believe for the large part, they are very similar. What we try to do with the school age program is try to make sure that the requirements mimic those of the school districts where they are operating on. Again, I will be very clear. You talk about CDC, other public health experts. The recommendations and the guidance that we produce are based on the preponderance of scientific evidence and the thinking of scientific experts. While we can debate that and people can agree or disagree, my approach, my responsibility is to listen and to read and to see what the scientific community is saying is the best option. And so that will continue to be our approach, is to use science and experts to be the basis of our recommendation. And yes, there are pros and cons. It's, there's nothing better than just being yourself and not wearing mask. But the assertion that mask causes this and that, or the assertion that this daycare establishment, as a matter of fact, this week alone, Eldona shared a letter from one of the providers. The feedback that we have been getting from our providers are completely different from what I'm hearing from you.
Okay.
Commissioner Allenbrand, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I want it to be known that, first of all, I want to thank Mrs. Chestnut and Dr. Oriella and his team for what they have been doing, and I want it to be known that not all daycares and home care providers believe that this is an issue with them. So I did make some phone calls. There are several of them that had made comments that really appreciated to have the extra advice, to have somebody come in. You know, I was a licensed daycare home provider for several years, and having somebody come in to kind of be the other eye was most helpful to me. So I just want to thank you for what you're doing, and also to let you know there's many parents out there that really appreciate getting back to work and being able to go on with life and move past this.
Okay. Commissioner Hensley.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. From hearing the guidance, the strong recommendations, it seems to me that those are very appropriate because they provide parents the opportunity to make an informed choice. The parents can see what the Department of Health and Environment is recommending. They can understand if their daycare is complying with that or not. If they choose that they don't want to have their child in a facility or a program that is following those recommendations, they can go elsewhere. But I think it comes down to giving parents the opportunity to have informed choice. As Commissioner Allenbrand said, a lot of parents are very grateful for these efforts to keep the daycares open because their livelihood depends on it. And if they can look at these guidelines and know that their provider is following them and protecting their child to the greatest degree recommended by public health experts, I think that's very, very important. Again, I think it gives parents the information they need to make an informed choice.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Chestnut, is this the first time you've presented before the commission?
Regarding childcare licensing in any recent time, yes.
Well, very good. Well, welcome. You're not quite in person, but thank you for your presentation. Very thorough, very thoughtful. The question that I was trying to get a little clarification on related to the strong masking recommendation by our department, the state, and the CDC. Has there been any impacting or any impact on the licensing of any child care provider in Johnson County because they did or did not follow the recommendations?
There has not. Again, it's just a consultation. It's regarding that when we go in for visits, we have gotten some complaints called in by parents saying, you know, my facility is not following, you know, they're not protecting my kids from COVID, you know. And if we get something like that, then we basically will, it's usually just a phone call. It's not usually a visit because we don't cite that because that's not part of the regulation.
Okay, so actual licensing hasn't been impacted to date, as far as we know.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, thank you very much. Ms. O'Hara?
Yes, I just have one other comment. I just want parents to be very aware that masking their children is optional, that this is not a mandate from the county, it is not a mandate from KDHE, it is not a mandate from CDC. Your child care facility may choose to implement that, but you as a parent must understand that this is not a mandate from the state, the county, or the federal level, and that you do have options and that you can request that your child not be masked. I'm just very concerned as a grandparent about these little children being masked. I mean, my 5-year-old, I didn't even realize he was being masked because he was going to a Catholic school, and I made the assumption that he wasn't. And he was with me, and we were stopping at the FedEx, and I said, hey, I want you to come in with me. And he said, I will not go in if I have to be masked. And I said, well, you don't have to be masked. But that is what is impacting. And all of these sanitizers and all that, and my grandson, it's causing cirrhosis on his hands. I mean, his hands are bleeding. These are real impacts on these children, and we have to stand back and be judicious about what we are requiring. And I just have a grave concern that we had a public health order for K through 6, and that it was being implemented in these child care centers on children 2 to 5. Those are my concerns. Thank you.
I think that's been adequately explained, and appreciate that explanation very much. I think it's been stated over and over that it's a strong recommendation, and that, the Public Health Department has the responsibility. So anyway, thank you very much for that report. Next item.
Yes, Chairman, the next item is the legislative report or update. You have the report in your packets. A couple things to point out very quickly. Legislatures, you likely know, finished their work early this week, so they were able to extend their scheduled 3-day weekend to 4 days, so a little break for them. That concludes the first half of the legislative session. We're now working with our consultants, Federico and Durst, sorting through what remains to be worked on the second half of the session, so I'll provide that update likely next week. The 988 bill, which is the National Suicide Prevention Hotline, a bill we have been following closely. Some difficult conversations in committee about funding for that service, not surprisingly. It has now been referred to the House Telecom Committee for further study. However, it has been approved for work in the second half of the session after this first legislative deadline, so they will continue to work that issue. The Senate heard a proposal aimed at plastic bag and container regulation that was on last week. Senate Commerce Committee held a hearing. That's Senate Bill 493, which would prohibit cities and counties from regulating plastic bags and other containers. Similar legislation has been heard previously by the legislature, but this is the most extensive language that we have seen to date on this issue. Specifically, that bill would forbid the limitation of use of any auxiliary containers, which includes not just plastic, but most food service packaging materials. So we'll continue to monitor that as well. A little bit of good news, I continue to report on House Bill 2567, which is a bill being advanced by Johnson County and county treasurers. That's the registration and title fee. Really, I would call it a simplification bill. That passed the House this week by a wide margin, 114 to 6. Special thanks to our own commissioner, or excuse me, used to be commissioner, now Representative Topliker, who carried that bill on the House floor this week. So again, good news there. And with that, Chairman, I'd be happy to answer questions.
Ms. O'Hara.
Could you just give me a little bit more clarification on the bill that Representative Topliker was carrying?
Yes, that has to do with vehicle registration and titling. Maybe the best way to explain this, if you look at your receipt, you'll see a fairly long list of different fees. This was an attempt to standardize that, reduce it, make it more clear to the public. So again, I think why it was passed a wide margin.
Okay, so this is transparency.
Yeah.
Okay.
And simplification.
Right.
Yeah.
And any movement on SB 338 on trying to curtail Kansas City Area Transit Authority from coming over into Johnson County?
No, that is in committee, and I believe that is probably dead for this session.
Okay. We'll see what we can do about that. Thank you.
Now we'll move to our COVID-19 report. Dr. Ariola, do you have a brief report? I look at the data and it's getting better.
Yes, Chairman, I'll make it very brief. If you just take me to the second slide. The numbers, updated numbers as of today for incidence rate, we are down to 104 per 100,000 residents. That's close to where we were pre-Omicron surge in November. We were at around 90, so that's very good news. Positivity rate is at 8.2%. Again, we know that testing numbers are down, and so that could impact positivity rate. But we're very happy about where the numbers are trending. So if you skip the next slide and then go to the fourth slide on vaccinations. The first, next one, yeah. So these are the numbers from our WebIZ, which is the KDHE database. From the KDHE database, we're showing 77% partially vaccinated and 67% fully vaccinated. Next slide, again, is the breakdown by age, it gets better as people get older in our county. Next slide, which is the last one that I will show, Chairman, is the CDC data, which is more comprehensive. Again, to look at the row where we have the percentage of population greater or equal to 5 years old, that's showing, it's capped at 95%, so we're showing 95% have at least one dose and about 79% fully vaccinated. Again, those numbers are pretty good and trending in the right directions for now. So happy to take any questions.
All right, thank you very much. Well, that is good information and hope it continues. I would make this suggestion that that we do our COVID report every other week, unless somebody objects. The data continues good. Mr. Ashcraft?
No objection, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
I did have a question.
All right.
Yes, Dr. Ariola, I don't know if you had the opportunity to hear community comments, but there was one question posed, and I was wondering if you had any thoughts related to the fact that the numbers are improving, but we in Johnson County are possibly lagging behind some other regions of the world that have had Omicron, but have relaxed the mandates, removed the mandates. And I was wondering, have they seen any shifting or fluctuations that may be portents to concerns that we should have?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner, for the excellent question. So yes, several countries, Denmark, UK, have seen the surge and they have removed a lot of their mandates. So what they're seeing right now is driven by a sub-variant of Omicron. So the original surge was driven by the BA1 lineage, but there's a secondary spike that we are seeing in some of these locations that are driven by the BA2 sub-variant of Omicron. So we have seen that. Again, the variables here are many in the sense that vaccination rates are important and they keep getting better. In some of those places, vaccination rates are actually better than the United States, but they still saw the secondary spike. But there are still research going on as to whether it's more virulent or more infectious. It's trending to perhaps not be as virulent, but we're very cautious because you depend on the research that you're looking at. You're getting varying inferences for now, which means we just need to do more research. So there's the possibility that there will be a secondary surge driven by BA2. And we did detect the BA2 lineage here about 3-4 weeks ago.
Okay, thank you. All right, if there's no other questions, Ms. Hanslick.
Yes, thank you. Just a follow-up to that, Dr. Ariola, can you just give a brief update what's going on with the hospitals this week? How are they doing?
Yes, so we have a regular meeting with them next Wednesday, but the hospitals are doing better. The numbers are declining. And again, as we've seen, hospitalization metrics tends to lag infection numbers. So the numbers are not quite as low as pre-Omicron, but it will. The last couple of weeks, we have seen much lower numbers, which means in 3-4 weeks' time, we will expect those metrics to be even better than they currently are. I would just say the best way to describe where there is, everyone is cautiously optimistic, but also understand that it doesn't take much for things to tip the other way.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. All right, that concludes our reports. We will turn to commission comments. Ms. Fast?
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight in the best of times, there is a recognition of our, for Social Work Month, of our social workers who work in the area agency, and thank you for the best of times for highlighting it. We have like 20 highly experienced aging social workers in our area agency and aging and human services department. I've worked with some of these people for over a decade. Some have been there 20, 25 years. So it really says a lot about our human services and aging department, and thank you for highlighting it in this magazine.
Ms. Allenbrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just like to report I went to Airport Commission Board yesterday, and they have some more leases that are going to be coming up. They're also going back and looking at all their fees and getting those updated, so I really appreciate that. I would like to let everyone know that on Saturday, April 23rd, is their 6th annual Armed Friends in Service Day. It's shortened for FISH. It's 9 to 4. It's actually Friends of Service of Heroes. I was able to attend last year. It was very well attended, even in all the rain and everything else. Commissioner Fast was there as well. This year they expect a bigger turnout than what they did last year. I just want to say thank you to the mayors and city managers working together and the road staff on our issues of trying to, not make them issues, but, trying to work out the traffic.
Okay. Mr. Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple items, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to share with the commission and members of the public the Friends of JCDS, Johnson County Development Support, will be having an open house for, I believe, the 22nd?
Friday.
The 22nd home that, or maybe 23rd. They're moving along, but the open house is going to be Friday, tomorrow from 10 to 4, and Saturday from 10 to 2. The official open house is Saturday, but you can come by. And it's going to be at 9306 West Terrace in Overland Park. Those details, I believe, are on the website, the JCDS website, but the work that the Friends have done for the last 20 years has just been phenomenal, and to provide as many homes and the support that they do for our IDD population is just magnificent. So I'm going to try to go. I always enjoy kind of the pre-construction look and the post-construction work and what they've done to some of those homes, and they've really improved those properties. The neighbors almost always, I think always just appreciate, because they take homes that are maybe not up to par in the neighborhood and turn them around, and it's really worthwhile. The second thing, Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Chairman, I must confess that from time to time you just miss protocol. And, I appreciate the fact that you pointed out that the sheriff had a 5-year anniversary, probably his second or third 5-year anniversary. But, there's another anniversary. We do them for 5, 10, 15, and so forth. But we have a 15-year anniversary. And I don't know if you know this, Mr. Chairman, but this individual has been a guiding influence in nearly $3 billion worth of infrastructure development in Johnson County government. And that's with a B, Mr. Chairman. And this individual is also known because when I talked to some of some of his peers and coworkers, they indicated that they always have appreciated his historical perspective and resource and the ability to recall the events in the past that affect our present and potentially affect our future. And finally, I wanted to make sure that he realized that the professional staff very much appreciate his unflinching support that they have offered to them over the years. And let's see, who is that? Oh, Mr. Chairman, that's you. Congratulations. Here's your 15-year pin.
Sometimes you lose track. Commissioner Hanslick.
Well, thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Chair, and we are very, very grateful for your leadership, and I appreciate Commissioner Ashcraft making that presentation and recognizing that we have benefited from your guidance, and I know I personally appreciate it very much. Wanted to also thank Commissioner Fast for recognizing the importance of social workers. As a social worker myself, I know how hard they work, and social workers rock, so thanks for pointing that out. I also appreciate Commissioner Ashcraft mentioning the new Friends of JCDS house that is in District 4, and I will be there and look forward to that. I'll be there tomorrow, so hopefully our paths will cross. And then finally, as the liaison to the Johnson County Library Board, I wanted to make sure that people had heard the word that our excellent leader of the library, Sean Casserly, has announced that he will be leaving us, retiring, and I believe it'll be somewhere near the end of June or early July will be his last day. I look forward to the opportunity to thank him and review all of the various facilities and programs that have been strengthened and expanded under his leadership. So, Sean, if you're here, if you're listening to this, thank you, and we look forward to celebrating all your accomplishments before you leave. Thank you.
Commissioner, will there be an interim then? Or what's the process?
I don't think that's been determined yet. The library board will be responsible for that process, and so we'll wait to hear from them.
Commissioner Myers.
Thank you, Chair. I concur with Ms. Hanslick's speaking about your leadership. I've known your leadership for, again, it's been so many years, I can't remember the total number, but this is the first time I've been able to be under your leadership, being a part of this board. And again, you are much appreciated. And thank you for all your service. Not very often does Commissioner Ashcraft miss a birthday, and I'm not good at birthdays. But I know of one that took place yesterday, and that's she had a wonderful birthday. Commissioner Allenbrand, happy birthday.
Well, all right. Thank you. Commissioner O'Hara.
Oh, thank you. My comment is that I'm still very hopeful that we can change the first budget meeting into a committee of the whole so that it can be broadcast to the public and archived. I'm trying to get my point across that it's extremely important that we have transparency, and that I will continue to question the requirements, strong recommendation on masking our most little ones, and that we have great challenges in front of us. This Russian invasion into the Ukraine, all of these inflationary issues and disturbances on the world stage is going to be impacting us. And we just have to be cognizant of that and just keep focusing on our job to be most efficient with our expenditures, and because it's going to be impacting our constituents greatly this year. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We do have a committee of the whole meeting at 2 p.m. to receive the Planning Commission's and staff's recommendation, along with the consultant who have been working with the Planning Commission in regards to the solar farm issue. Just for the record, we will not make any decisions in regards to that Planning Commission recommendation today. It is for information. There is no public hearing today. That will be scheduled later, and that's probably the decision that we will need to make at the conclusion of the Committee of the Whole. So, before we adjourn from our action, it is about 12:30. We will take 40-minute lunch break and come back at 1:10 for our agenda review, and then the Committee of the Whole will begin at 2 p.m. So, we are adjourned. Lunch is served.
For 40 minutes, is that what you said?
Did we get cake or cupcakes or something?